All right, everybody, welcome to the Average Intelligence Podcast. It's all serious today. He says,
True.
unable to keep the smile from cracking. Some harsh words were said.
Harsh words. Not by me.
Oh no, that was totally me. What can I say? I get carried away in promos.
I mean,
But
isn't that not what promos are for?
that's
I,
exactly
I,
what promos are for.
I was inspired by, I won't lie, I was inspired by John Cena, and Hugh Jackman on James Corden, where it was like the reverse trash talking. And that's kind of
Oh,
what inspired me, where it was like it's like
see,
the anti promo, where you say things in a really aggressive way, but like nicely.
but I just can't give that piece of shit credit.
Which one?
Uh, James Fuckface.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I was like, wait. Do you know like Cena? Because I mean, hey, I could see the argument.
I tried so hard for years not to like Cena as a wrestling fan, but you
Man, you
just
can't help
can't.
it.
Because even if you don't particularly like him, there's respect because I mean the guy carried the company on his back for 10 years.
I mean, yeah, and just I mean, I look again, athleticism. I'm all about guys who are just like athletic and put in the work.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about wrestling.
No. Well, I'd say, I will say sort of because I think I described this event as the podcasting equivalent of the WWE cage match where Mankind threw the Undertaker off the cage, and I said I wasn't sure who was going to be who by the end of this.
Funny you mentioned Cage.
Oh, that's so funny because that's one of my many examples of why I feel the writing is not strong.
Oh man,
That's my
come
side of this,
on.
by the way. And
Okay,
and
okay.
look,
How
I
how do
can't.
we how do we want to handle this? Is
I
there
don't know.
do we want to format it or do you just want to lay out your points? Okay,
Okay,
so
I've got
let's
I've got two kind of main points, and that is the beginning of the first book and the ending of the last book are bad. It's a
okay.
bad beginning and a bad ending. That's the starting point I will begin with.
Okay, I guess we'll start there. How is the beginning of the first book bad?
Because okay, imagine this, right? It's a series that's intended for children. It's called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. In your first chapter, you pick up this book, and it's from the perspective of Vernon Dursley. He's not your main character, and he eventually goes on to be the bad guy. Like it's
But
the
hang
chapter
on, hang
so
on, hang on,
forgettable
hang on.
that I
It's
forgot
not
it existed,
it's not
or
from the
antagonist to
perspective.
prefer.
It's not from the perspective. It's all the books are in third person perspective.
Well, sure, but I mean like perspective in the sense that it's the story of him as he's going through town and he's sort of experiencing all of these strange phenomenon as he's the main character of that first chapter, and it's not Harry Potter.
See, so I disagree, but I kind of get your point because most successful stories, most good stories start out in at least in the movies, it's called in media res, in the middle of action. And
Hmm.
then so that's your hook, that gets you hooked through. But I suppose I'm going to speak for J.K. Rowling here for a moment. I suppose that when you're writing a story like this, knowing that she wanted to do 7 books, that you need to establish a bit of the world first.
Sure, but my point to that would be clearly this was an extraneous scene for two reasons. One, I forgot it even existed until I listened to the audiobook for the first time in like years. And
See,
two, they
I did
completely cut
for
it out of the movie.
yeah, well, and so here's the thing though. This is a very common thing. This is the issue when you adapt a book to the screen because there are things that play out very well in a book. There are things that play out great on the page, horribly on screen.
Sure, but
Hence why, numerous cuts and changes were made to the Lord of the Rings films
oh, for
for
sure.
for their benefit because a lot of people notice, well, where's Tom Bombadil? First of all, Tom Bombadil sucks. Like
I mean, he's coming.
I hated him in the books
Yeah.
because it was just a very and this I love Tolkien, okay, before anybody comes at me in the comments, but Tom Bombadil is a waste of space even in terms of world building, because he's not a consequential character. I believe he's mentioned one more time in passing, and they even say,
Really.
"Oh, well, he'll probably lose the ring."
I mean, certainly he's not a character that has permeated the pop culture because I I know. I
No.
think on our podcast, I said, "What exactly is Tom Bombadil?" And Jordan went, "What is anything in Lord of the Rings?" And I was like, "Fair enough."
Well,
So,
actually, the vast majority of it is explained. I mean, you have to sometimes you have to dig deep, but Tom Bombadil is one of those things that is just flat out not clearly explained, and I guess in a way I kind of appreciate it because that's how the real world is things exist and you may or may not know their origin or explanation, but at the same time, in a narrative story, it's it's one thing to plant it and then have it pay off later, but it never becomes consequential to the story.
now, what I will say about going back, tying this back to Harry Potter, I will say that um, there's a lot of things in at least in the first book for Harry Potter that feels like foreshadowing, but I'm not sure if it is foreshadowing or if it's just like in retrospect it seems like foreshadowing. Where it's like, oh yeah, this is an idea that would pay off later, but did I guess that would be my I would punt that to you as a person who's in defense of these. Would you say that she was a person who foresaw a lot of the stuff she would end up doing?
She's on record saying some of it yes and some of it no, because you will. There are. I'm not even going to call them problematic elements because you got to give credit where credit's due. For somebody that wrote 7 books in sequential order and the entirety of the narrative thread was not thought out, things connect fairly well. There's an asterisk in the last book for that
Yes.
statement, because one of my biggest annoyances is the fact that they set up the concept of Horcruxes and Horcrux hunting in
That's
the
gonna be one of my
sixth book.
points.
Well, in a way they complete it, but just I didn't love the 7th book, and
So
I didn't love the 6th book the first time I read it, but I read it again and I was like, okay, this is tremendously better than
yeah.
what I remember it being. But I think it was because it was kind of a departure. And that's the other thing that I appreciate about the Harry Potter series that I think only people that grew up with the books can understand is because the books mature along with the reader. Because
Yes.
the first one is very lighthearted. There's still an element of danger, but let's be real here. It's not the sense of peril compared from book 1 to even when you get to book 4 is significantly different.
Hey, so I'm always one of those people where I think it less now, but I used to say there's some real tonal whiplash in that series though, where you're like oh, it starts off as this fun, lighthearted book about magic and wizards, and then by the seventh book, it's like Nazi allegories.
Well,
So like I
well, yes and no because they it's not as drastic of a change, but it also, that's what I mean by this by it it grows up with the reader, at least the original run. Now, kids don't have to wait for a new book to come out, because you would wait
true.
years. And it's so funny because when the first book came out, I was 11 or 12, which Harry's 11 in the first book. So let's see, in 1997, yeah, I would have been 11 abouts. I would have been turning 11 that October. So much like Harry, whose birthday is in July, I would have I'm basically the same age as Harry Potter,
I have a
narratively speaking.
similar experience with Daniel Radcliffe and the actors who play them. I'm the same age as them, so like I grew up with them. So it's just kind of yeah.
But
I get what
even
you mean.
yeah, but even the movies do it similarly, although there is a much bigger tonal shift in the movies,
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
like
sure,
significantly.
definitely.
Because I would argue it doesn't really get super. Well, no, I don't know. But
For me, it's the third one. The third movie was like instant, like it's darker, but that's because the second to the third one is Christopher Columbus. Oh my God, I'm gonna totally fuck up his name. Alexander or Alfred Curon. I want to say I can't remember what his actual. I can't remember what his name is. I just know his last name is Curon. But that's where the one where they're wearing regular clothes and it's all they get a lot of the outdoor stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
that did.
that one is the one where it really gets visually dark. Anyway.
Yeah, they did kind of give that one a Twilight filter before Twilight, didn't they?
It really did. It really did. That one is also, if you haven't, because I did a thing where I listened to all of the audiobooks in a row over the course of like several months, and then every time I'd finish a book, I'd watch a movie. And that third movie, if you haven't read the book, in my opinion anyway, is especially the ending, is kind of incoherent because that book very much has like 4 or 5 climaxes that the movie pretty much cuts out.
True, but
Like there's like a whole bit where it's like Hermione and Harry waiting for past Hermione and Harry where they have like a really like that's an example of if you're familiar with I know you know South Park obviously, but Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they follow a concept of writing. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's like but because therefore and not and then. And the end of that book is a lot of and then you find out that Peter is the rat, and then you find out that Sirius is the dog, and then you find out that Hermione's been time travel, and then.
well, you know what? I don't I understand what they mean by that statement, but I kind of disagree with it because it's very easy to change an and then into a because X, therefore Y. It's all in how
Fair
you
enough.
frame it because, in terms of how do I say it? So here's the thing. It can seem like and then Sirius is revealed to be the dog, but it's like no. Because Sirius's animagus form was a black dog, because what do they say? Because and therefore. Therefore, when they learn about the Grim, which is a very common sign in divination, it's a narrative coincidence, but it's not. I wouldn't say that it was an and then moment. I think that it is structured in the narrative that because Sirius's form has a reason explained in the book and the movie. It was they needed animals, so they needed Peter to be the rat so that he could trip the Whomping Willow off, and then they needed two big animals that could overpower Remus Lupin should he transform into a werewolf. So they have a big dog, and a stag, which makes sense. But because Sirius is a dog, which is a logical choice, because there are many common signs in divination that they learn, right? And the Grim just happens to be one of them. And we also find out that Professor Trelawney, albeit we find out later, Professor Trelawney is actually a very, very, very good at divination, but not actively. It's a quirk of hers, kind of. So it may very well have been the magic foretelling the future for Harry. They just misinterpreted the signs.
Right, fair point. My
Or
my other thing. Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry,
I'm
go on.
sorry, or it could have just been a coincidence, but it was only a coincidence because they had that association. If they'd had a different association, it would have meant nothing.
Yeah, true,
There would have just
true,
been a
true
big
enough.
shaggy dog following them around. But in a narrative sense, it plants ideas and diverts you as a reader.
Yeah.
And then when it's explained, it can feel like a and then, but it's actually a therefore.
I would also concede, and this is kind of I find myself I have to like stop myself every once in a while and be like, it is a book written largely by and large for children. So like you kind of have to kind of keep that in mind. We're like, this is really dumb and basic. But I will say though, the third book it does introduce like the worst concept J.K. Rowling ever introduced to Harry Potter. At least again in my opinion, which is the time turner. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like
yeah,
and
and
that yielded the worst thing that she ever or the worst thing in the Harry Potter franchise, which is the cursed child. That is a hill I will die on. That
well,
is
so okay, but
legitimately
you
bad.
can't, but can you blame J.K. Rowling for that?
She's got a writing credit on it, and it was marketed as
Well,
the eighth entry in the franchise.
Well, yeah, she's got a writing credit on it, but that's because she wrote the book series. I mean, let's be honest here.
She was so, but to me, I mean, with her,
But she didn't
I
write the
normally
play.
she gave notes, and
I'm
it's
sure she
it's
gave notes, but
with any other franchise I give you, but with J.K. Rowling, she's got such a tight grip on that franchise. No creative decision goes past her without it getting her say so. So I have to believe she was like at least a little involved in it.
I'm sure a couple extra zeros will get on the check. We'll get that on the left
I
side of the
mean,
decimal point.
yeah, I don't, yeah, I guess.
But then
Uh,
again, to be fair, it's not like she's hard up for money.
no, exactly. I don't know. It's just like I don't like the I call them the Fantastic Beasts. Where are they? They're probably in the case. Um,
Oh,
um,
Fantastic Beasts is terrible.
I mean, I don't think they're all bad. I just think that
I
second
do.
one, which she wrote, is bad. I don't. I think the first one is two movies that are competing with each other that are very confused. Like I think Eddie Redmayne and his friend, that guy from the Broken Lizard movies, traveling around the world finding magical beasts. That would have been a fun movie. And the it's a somehow Voldemort prequel movie is also a fun movie, but they kind of conflict with each other and they make one confused movie.
Well,
That's
and they recast Grindelwald.
that that too that but I if they had kind of made that, like if they had played into it more, like in terms of just being like, oh, he's just a different, I think I made a joke, it would have been funny if he just looked into the camera and went, I'm a different guy now. But I was of the opinion that they should have never changed him to Johnny Depp in the first place. Like he was perfectly fine as Colin Farrell, but maybe that's because I like Colin Farrell. I don't know, it might be that might be a bias of mine.
Maybe. The other thing that I really dislike about Fantastic Beasts is how they just can't help but it's a very subtle dig, but it is a dig. Either that or it's laziness, and either one I don't particularly forgive. Is they kind of I feel like it's a an insult to Americans because the the witches and wizards in the UK have a specific word for non-magical people. Obviously, they use the word muggle, and the
Yeah.
Americans couldn't come up with anything better than no mag, which Americans are masters of coming up with bullshit names for stuff.
My thing with that, it's, you're not wrong, um, but also my thing with that movie with the Americans and I guess the British to a certain extent, it's just weird how the magical world defaults to fascism so easily. Like it doesn't take much for them to go full bore fascist. Like,
Well, I mean, actually, to me, it makes more sense than the real world because you actually do have a division. Yeah, technically speaking, and I'm not advocating for magical fascism, but
but I could,
technically speaking, you do have an elite group of people, those that can use magic, right? So you already have there's a division that actually exists in ability.
sure.
It's not even a racial thing. It's there are people that can do magic, make shit appear out of thin air, shoot shit out of their wands that honestly, but you so I can see how an air of superiority and which then evolves into a need for purity, which they establish as nonsense because there are plenty of
Oh yeah.
muggle-born people that can use magic. But I digress. So to me, magical fascism makes more sense than real-world fascism. But speaking of magical fascism, the one thing that I never understood about Harry Potter is I understand wizards are powerful and all, but they're not bulletproof.
That's okay. I literally made a TikTok about that when I can't remember which one I listened to, where it's like, yeah, okay, but wizards don't know anything about muggle items, so they wouldn't even know what a gun is. So just shoot
You could
Voldemort in the head.
you could
Just shoot him in the
literally
head.
You could literally throw a grenade in the middle of in a like a thing of wizards, and they'd be like, "What's this?"
Yeah, what's this that or the other, or I mean in the seventh book at one point, what's her face, Bellatrix literally just devolves to threatening to stab Hermione. She's like, you better tell me what I want to know or I'll stab you to death.
And
Apparently
her
magic at a certain point has its limits when it
see
comes to torture.
Harry Potter could never happen in the United States ever because
No, because
Hermione would just pull out an AR and just end her.
I mean certainly she'd have a purse handgun at the very least.
I kind of want to see that movie now.
Well, I,
Harry, like just have a magic like Hogwarts in the middle of Texas, and none of that shit would have happened.
I mean, that's one of my things with Harry Potter is I've always felt it was a because it requires so much of it requires them to go through J.K. Rowling. It is a severely under merchandised franchise in my opinion. Like to me, there should be like way more spin-offs. Like I mean, there's the obvious ones like the Marauder spin-offs. I always felt like she was like gunning up to do a Voldemort spin-off. Like she was just always feeling the air for because his background is like mysterious. He's handsome and good looking and he's charming. So there's like room for there to be someone to write a script where it's like maybe Voldemort was misunderstood or whatever. And there's a
See,
period of his life There's an origin. How does it become Ray Fiennes?
Yeah. So that's where I think a franchise like The Walking Dead, at least in theory, was superior because there were quite a few spin-offs, and technically speaking, you could do spin-offs for The Walking Dead with endless possibilities because I don't think we've even seen anything outside of the United States in terms of the franchise, and there are multiple spin-offs. Because like you could
For The Walking
easily
Dead? Yeah, no, yeah.
how fucking scary would Walking Dead Australia be?
You're not wrong. What are they on like with The Walking Dead like on spinoff like 3 or 4? Like I can't
It
like
is
there's like
well, that's only TV shows. If you count like you've got the Telltale video games, which technically are ties into the graphic novel, but I consider them spin-offs because they do deviate somewhat.
did you play the I mean I know you're a busy guy, but did you play speaking of video games, did you play Legacy?
What, The Walking Dead Legacy?
No, the Harry Potter Legacy.
No,
We're talking
no, and you know what? It's because I don't have time. Kind of I would like to, but that's a game that to me it seems like requires a lot of time.
a little bit. It's all right. It's all right.
The concept seems really, really good.
It's a little too much. It's not enough bully, if that's a reference that gets you. It's not
Yeah.
enough that. It's too much like you other like it
Was it
desperately wants your character to be Harry Potter. Like yeah,
was it
like
Rockstar Games?
no, it's
No, okay.
Montreal Studios. It's all right. It's probably the best version of a Harry Potter you're gonna get, but it's not. That was one that for reasons people it was a hill people were willing to die on. It was
See,
not a hill worth dying on.
there was a Harry Potter game that came out very early, like for PlayStation 2, before the movies, and
I don't.
I cannot remember for the life of me what it was called. Maybe it was after the first movie, but I want to say it was before because it wasn't like Daniel Radcliffe. It was
Oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, it's for PlayStation 2. It's actually it it's for the first one, and it's after it is after the movies because there's one for PS1 that's the first game.
okay.
But
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's
I
more
I
based off the
couldn't.
book than the movies, I think
Yeah, I
is
couldn't
the
remember the time, but I remember specifically being like, this is more based off the books.
yeah, I've never played it, but I know it by reputation.
Okay, how do you feel about Quidditch as a
Well, as a
concept?
sport, as a
As a
concept, okay. In the books, by the third one, yeah, that's one of my things with the writing. She loves to over explain everything. So it's like by the third one, even if you're a kid, I get Quidditch, Joan. I don't need you to explain it to me again. I get it. You spend a great deal of time in other books explaining the sport. I don't need you. It's like the fourth one. It's like that. There's a entire chapter of a tournament in which she explains the sport I already know how to play. I don't hate Quidditch. There's actually quite a good Quidditch game for PS2.
you know
An EA one that's quite
what
fun.
what kills me about Quidditch though is there like I don't even know why you would attempt to play it or to not I don't know why you would attempt to play it seriously, yet people do.
Oh,
And
absolutely, yeah.
it's not possible.
Here's what I
Actually,
will say.
no. No, I take that back. It is possible.
It's possible.
You're on a you're
Closest to soccer, if
I
I would
mean
have to
it
guess.
is essentially sock. Now, see, here's the thing.
Wizard soccer on brooms.
They they really
Or
should.
rugby. Or rugby.
I would probably watch soccer if it had Quidditch rules. Like
That
if there were people that just their job was to kick balls at other players,
would be pretty fun. That would
I'd
be
watch
fun.
that. I'd
My
watch that.
my
And then there's a little bouncy ball on the field and
yeah,
it's tied to a cat and that's the Seekers.
that would be fun. My
That
my
would
thing
be
with
fun.
Quidditch, my thing with Quidditch is as loath as I am. Okay, my ultimate thing is I like Harry Potter. I grew up with it. I'm always gonna have a fondness and a softness for it. It drives me crazy when people call Quidditch a bad sport that doesn't make any sense because Quidditch absolutely makes sense and
Quidditch makes
like
so much sense.
yeah
Like
and they're like oh but
it absolutely makes
they're
sense.
like oh but the snitch ruins the game. No, the snitch is
No,
very much a like
no,
we never see
the snitch gives you a constant race against the clock.
yeah. And you can also like win a game too soon before you get the Quidditch. Like when you catch the Quidditch is very much part of the strategy. Like, and you can absolutely win a game by getting more points with just quaffle shots. Like I say, there's a really good PS2 game
Well,
that's a Quidditch game made by EA Sports that's
in
really fun.
yeah, in book 4 at the Quidditch World Cup, the team wins, but the other team caught the team that wins didn't catch the snitch.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you want to also delay the other team from catching that snitch so you can catch up. Like it's all part like the thing people don't get is you only ever see Quidditch. It's like you're watching the wizarding equivalent of high school basketball. Like it's not going to be
I'm
the same as the NBA.
I mean, true. And I think that is something that they kind of, I don't know how you would do it in film, but I think they actually could have had a bit more extended showing the game for the Quidditch World Cup.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah.
But
My okay, my
just to showcase the difference. It's
oh
kind
for
of like,
sure.
yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of like comparing like college sports or it's like comparing professional sports to a high school league. Like
Yeah,
there's no comparison.
absolutely. Yeah. The books and the books and the movies are two completely different animals. I think the movies actually do a lot to water down some some of her worst instincts in terms of storytelling because my thing with the Harry Potter books generally is they tend to be not very well paced books. Like at least in my opinion, they take quite a
See,
lot of time to get
I
to the thing that you want them to do, which is go to Hogwarts in a lot of cases. Like, okay, they're in Diagon Alley, and we're still only on chapter 5, and this is a
it's
short book. Are you kidding
well,
me?
but particularly the first book. That's world building, dude. That's
I mean, I don't disagree, but it could. I mean, I guess because I'm listening. To be fair to the books, I'm also listening to it in audiobook format, so like that also stretches the pacing of it a bit to a degree. And I think the pacing is better in the early books. The later, the fifth book in particular is so badly paced. It's one of the it is agonizing. I stand by that book is too long because I felt it when I read it the first time when I was a teenager, and I still feel it to this day. That book is too long.
that's funny because it's my favorite one.
Oh, that's not to say I don't like that book and I don't like that story, but like there's so many moments where I'm like, Joan, man, your editor was scared of you. Like, your editor should have told you like
Well,
trim here, trim here, trim here, trim
but
here.
realistically, by book five, it's certainly by which I
He's
think
George
they should.
Lucas.
Well, I think they should have reined her in for book four because book four is also. I agree with you on book four. Book four is too long. The
Oh
pacing
yeah.
is awful. Um, it's not a particularly great story.
I that's funny. See, this is where we're changing minds because I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that the fourth one's twist is really good.
The twist is
The
good.
twist is really good and the movie butchers it. Movie
It's the worst movie by far. I
They
hate the
telegraph it so hard. It's
well,
awful.
and the only good part about the fourth movie is when Robert Pattinson dies. It's the
I
only good part.
mean, I'm a David Tennant lover, so David Tennant doing his little lip flick is always gonna. I don't care how bad they telegraph that twist. I still love him.
Yeah, they telegraph it hard in the movie.
Yeah,
They
and they
really
cut
do.
out so many. That's the one where they start. I maintain the sixth movie is just legit a bad movie. Like it's just a bad. It's not even just that it's a bad adaptation, which it is. It's a bad movie generally because if you're not, it assumes you've read the book to a bad degree.
Yeah, it does. And that's the problem. I think that's why I didn't like the sixth book the first time. I didn't like it as much the first time I read it because it's the first time I read it, it seemed to come out of left field, but I probably missed a lot of the foreshadowing.
Yes, that's
Because
my. It
when I
did catch me off guard.
when I reread it, I knew what happened, so I caught a lot more of the foreshadowing.
Absolutely,
So and
absolutely.
maybe that's the fault of the author. I don't know, but
I mean, I love that sixth book because I mean, we're spoiling ages old books, but when Dumbledore dies, that floored me. Like floored me. I was like,
and
oh, and I just
that
kept expecting him to turn out to. He's not actually dead, guys. He's coming back.
and credit to J.K. Rowling for that
Yeah, I will
because
give
I
credit to
think
that.
well, and that's not the only thing. I mean, people, particularly in the last book, I mean, and then Dobby dies as well in the sixth
Yeah,
book. Is that the sixth book or the seventh?
seventh. I do want to shout out when it comes to the books. Um, I don't know if you've ever listened to the audiobooks, but
I have for the third one.
I highly recommend all of them. They're so good. The narrator Jim Dale, he like tour de force fucking performance. Like
He
it's so
even
funny because
Yeah,
like
he even raises the pitch of his voice for Hermione.
well, it starts off when you started the first one. You're familiar with Dragon Ball. Are you familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged at all?
I've seen
Are
some
you
of it.
familiar with the concept of girl voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's it starts off girl voice. He's got three voices. He's got hero boy, snotty villain boy kid, and girl voice. And then by the end of it, yeah, he's got his own little like there's one of the most incredible scenes in that audiobook series is in the seventh book. The bit where it's Hermione, Ron, and Harry are breaking into the ministry and they're
Hmm.
all disguised as different people. He's doing and in the books, unlike in the movies, or the vocal cords change, so they have the person's voice, but he's doing Harry as this guy as Harry. So he still has all of Harry's vocal quirks and all the things he's established as what Harry sounds like, but it's this new voice. It's incredible. It's one of the most
See,
incredible voice acting performances I've
is
ever
he
heard.
is he a voice actor by trade?
No, I don't think he started off. No, I think he was just purely a narrator, just a guy who read audiobooks. And he
Well,
just really developed those characters. If you like the Harry Potter books, I highly recommend it. It's
oh no,
really
they're
good.
good. Like I can speak personally for Prisoner of Azkaban. It's good, especially his portrayal of Peter Pettigrew,
Yes.
Wormtail.
I love his
Yeah,
Snape. His Snape is so
his Snape
good.
is good. His Snape
His
is
Snape is
good.
so good. I mean, me and Jordan always make fun of how his Hermione Harry how she used to say that. But okay, so it's funny you mentioned the seventh book. It has no ending. The book has no ending.
Well,
That
that's
I
not
would just
true.
it okay. They kill Voldemort. Hard cut, smash cut, epilogue. Nobody likes. Like there's no answer to like there's no okay. So now Voldemort's dead, and now there's a power vacuum in the government. There's like Harry. Several of his friends are now dead, who he never emotionally reconciles with that fact. Like one of the twins, the guy he's known since he was 11, is now dead, and he never emotionally reconciles with that.
Fair. Okay. I mean, it definitely has an end. It's an ending to that story, but all those things that you're mentioning, once again, even though it was more
Like
than
one more
7 years, so
chapter, one
one
more
more
chapter,
chapter maybe. Okay,
one more chapter.
or at least, yeah, I could see one more chapter.
Like, and
But
after the battle, they all be like,
her
"Holy shit, that just happened."
her her editor probably said, "You can't do another chapter. It's too fucking long."
Yeah, you need to end this. Oh, I said it felt like she wrote herself into a corner, and she's like, "Shit."
But yeah,
7 years, 15 years later, like it
yeah,
just
but
felt like narratively like the equivalent to like, and then it was all a dream. Like she just couldn't come up with an ending. Which,
I don't.
to be fair, she took a long time to write that seventh book. So like, she was
Well, and
struggling on that ending.
you know what it really does feel like that she started and then stopped and then picked it back up again like a year later,
It does
but
because
didn't change anything that she'd previously written.
I can absolutely agree with that because why? How else do you explain? It's funny you mentioned the Horcruxes. We didn't even get to midway. The book stops out of nowhere so we can investigate the Deathly Hollows, a subplot that literally doesn't really go much of anywhere, and then they pick the Horcruxes
Oh,
back up
I'm
again.
sorry. That's the point I wanted to make because I started to make a point about Horcruxes, but then I'm like, well, wait, they do destroy all the Horcruxes, but so yes, that's the point. The book starts out very clearly like we have to find all the Horcruxes and we have to destroy them, but then they learn about the Deathly Hallows and it feels like they're gonna shift. It feels like they're shifting strategy, but then
Yeah.
they go back, like they nothing really comes of the Deathly Hallows. I
Yep.
mean, it
Just
does, but not in an active way. Like Harry is just given
yep.
the what is it, the Immortality Stone or whatever, the Stone of
He's
Immortality.
pretty much given all of them. He's given the
Well, he had
invisibility cloak when he was a kid, and then he was given the stone by Dumbledore.
he's given the stone by Dumbledore, and then because which kudos to Dumbledore as a plan maker because Harry disarms Malfoy, who killed Voldemort, which is why. I mean, I'm sorry, who killed Dumbledore, which is why Dumbledore. No, Snape killed him. I'm sorry.
But it was Draco who had possession of the Elder One because he defeated Dumbledore by disarming
Yeah.
him in the
Yes.
first place. Yeah,
Yes.
so he was, and because Harry defeated Malfoy, he was now the master. It's really dumb. It's really dumb. It's like
It is
13 levels of like 3D
it
chess. You're like, oh my god,
it's not when you consider that it's Dumbledore. Although outside of a fantasy novel, it's like that's never gonna fucking happen.
right? It's like it's just all
You're just assuming that in all the fights that Harry's gonna be in with Death Eaters that no one's gonna disarm him ever.
right, exactly.
Not to
I
mention
yeah
he might even get killed. Although what would have been kind of funny is if like some lowly Death Eater ended up being the master of the Elder Wand
yeah
and had
yeah.
and never had any idea. Had
just
no
hadn't. Well,
clue.
I think that's what I in the book anyway. That's a big part of the lore of that thing is many people didn't know that they had it. It was just a wand that yeah that they just happened to kill one guy over another. Um,
Yeah, so the Deathly Hallows kind of get shoehorned in, I guess is the best way to put
yes,
it. Like they do, I don't even know why they bothered with the invisibility cloak being one of them though, because it really, because Harry's had the invisibility cloak since he was 11.
it felt like one of those she wanted to retroactively explain like why it was
Yeah,
so good.
you know what is it's exactly like C3PO being in episode 1.
It is. Yeah, she was.
There's
It's funny because that's how people to go back to the which one was it? The Cursed Child. Someone described that play as her George Lucasing her own franchise, and she just does it all the time, like constantly. Just George Lucas is her own franchise.
and which that does
Like
annoy me when because there's the thing like I can buy R2 being connected to Anakin because
sure.
he theoretically knows who Obi-Wan Kenobi is. Like it makes sense. But 3PO, there's no goddamn reason.
Don't you remember though? He had his memory wiped, Jake. That's why he
I
didn't
I, I
remember.
know, and that god damn it, I
That felt
hate
like
that.
that's one of those moments that feels like a note where it's like George, how does he remember? He remembers George. Oh shit. Wipe the droid's mind. And it literally played out like that. Like that's brilliant. Put it in the script.
Brilliant. And
Yeah,
then
brilliant.
while I'm bitching about C3PO, did anybody else notice in The Force Awakens that he had the random red arm and that is solely there to be a bad robot, like Easter egg tease?
I mean, that what irritated me about that the most is how you find out why he has that red arm in a random book that you could pick up
which
or a
was
comic
just
book.
which was just an explanation after the fact because everybody was like, "Why the fuck is 3PO's arm red?" Like none of episode 7. This is why I hate the entire trilogy. None of them make sense narratively speaking. Like in episode 7, right? They're treated like the underdogs, the resistance, but the resistance is part of the government. It
Yeah.
is it is quite literally the army of the republic, except for some reason they're like, "Huh, that'll never happen again." Except
Yeah,
it
it's
like
made all the
why
more weird
like
because they pretend like the First Order has all the power, but they don't. Yeah, I know those movies bother me
well, but
too.
they do because the republic has no military.
No,
It doesn't
evidently not.
exist. It doesn't exist except like the resistance to what? That's such a stupid name when you are the ones in power. The First
Yeah,
Order is the rebellion. The First Order is the good guys in the Star Wars universe because they are the rebels.
but you wouldn't get that impression from that movie, really, because they want you to think that they have all the
Well, no,
power when they.
they're the villains, but what it really is the like if you're going to take it literally, well not literally, but you know what I mean. If you're going to take it from a historical context, the First Order is the Confederacy,
I mean, yes, yes,
except
absolutely,
with
yeah.
a fuckload more fire. It would be like if you had the Confederacy versus the Union, but you switched the military and manufacturing capabilities of the two.
Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong.
But
Speaking of
it's like the union says, "Oh, we have all this manpower and manufacturing power, but we're just gonna not use it. Trains, fuck that. We're gonna walk on foot everywhere." Like, why do they handicap themselves? And because of that, the whole franchise sucks because it starts out from a place of being illogical to me.
fair. I mean that first one was like, hey, thing you recognize, and then and then the next one tried to be like, hey, don't think you're yeah.
Hey, you
That
remember
that
that
was
name
flawed
you
from the
recognize?
foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty
Ryan
much.
Johnson came along and was like, "Hey, you remember that name you recognize? It's shit."
Yeah. I'm gonna deconstruct it, but in a way that nobody likes. Nobody wants deconstruction out of Star Wars.
And we're gonna do a subplot about animal rights in space Vegas for
Although I
some
will
reason.
admit, yeah, I will admit I'm probably in the small minority of people who actually likes the acolyte. So like, you know, I do enjoy the occasional bit of deconstruction. Um,
I'm gonna pretend like it. So your opinion of Harry Potter just goes out the window for me when you say you like the Acolyte.
okay, I don't like all of it. I like parts of it.
What parts do you like?
I thought a lot of the fight sequences were I liked them. Like
Oh,
I
okay,
like
okay. I'll give you that because
like that fight sequence between the guy from Squid Games and the guy from The Good Place is like legit. It's good. I also like Jason from The Good Place. I liked him. I also like ambiguity and nuance. So I like the idea that maybe the Jedi suck a little bit and maybe the Sith don't totally suck. Like I kind of I like
I like that in a vacuum, but
it's also
that belongs in Star Trek, not Star Wars.
I don't disagree, but as a guy, as I get older, I discover I like areas of the pockets. I like my it's Luke Skywalker and it's Darth Vader and it's basic and it's simple, but I think there's room in the universe for an acolyte.
Well,
That having been
particularly,
said,
yeah, particularly an expanded universe. You're not talking about
yeah,
three movies anymore. You're talking about a wide expanding universe.
exactly.
And the concept of the gray Jedi is a thing. So,
Yeah, and I mean like the idea that like if you everyone got pissed off when they tried to make the Force a science fiction thing. If you want to make it a spiritual philosophical thing and it's now a religion, then the idea that there are different factions of like of that religion that exist out there that worship this Force in a different way, I didn't that makes a certain amount of sense to me. And I also just like the fact that the Jedi it's a different portion of the universe, so the Jedi are different. Like I like this the fact that they mostly fight hand to hand combat and they like there's more hand to hand stuff in there. Like I say, that fight in the final episode was good. Like between again Jason, that was good. Like with him like taking apart the lightsaber into two, yeah, it was good. And again, I like him.
yeah.
He was yeah
And
he was interesting.
yeah. By the way, I forgot. I always forget to say at the beginning, this podcast is brought to you by One Weekend at Horrorland and uh, Revival, book one of the Unveiled book series. We will talk about both of them at some point. Actually, I think right now we're going to go ahead and play you one of the promotional videos for One Weekend at Horrorland. This is the one where Cal Dodd threatens you bodily harm if you don't go to the
Favorite
events.
one.
So it's my favorite one too. I get a
It's my
kick out of that.
favorite
It's
one.
so surreal seeing Wolverine talk to you, but it's not Wolverine.
But
Yeah, it's
when we
just the
come
guy.
back, I have to take a moment to shout out X-Men real quick after we come
Yeah.
back. I know it's not
It'll
Harry
be
Potter, but after we come back.
it'll be apropos, but here it is.
Hi, folks. My name. Hi, folks. My name is Cal Dodd, and I voice Slappy from Goosebumps, the TV series, and Wolverine. I will be attending an event entitled One Weekend at Horrorland, but only if we're funded by July 30th. So please get your tickets or pledge to the Kickstarter today, bub. Come on, we need your help to make this very special, spooky weekend happen. Tim Jacobus, the original illustrator for Goosebumps, the series, will be there as well.
And Slappy loves Tim.
You don't want to miss this, bub. If you do, I will hunt you down.
And Slappy will make you his slave.
Come on.
Magic. And that was One Weekend at Horrorland. There is still time. I don't know why I'm pointing at you with that. It's there's still time. You can still donate to the Kickstarter. And I will share, I probably shouldn't share this tidbit with you, but I'm gonna share it anyway because fuck it. It'll incentivize you. So here's the thing. You know what? No, I'm not. I take that back. I'm not gonna share that with you because I just realized I can't for contractual reasons. But
Time yet.
I will say this much. Even though they still have a bit to reach their goal, it's still worthwhile to pledge on Kickstarter, even if they don't get to the goal. I will just leave it at that. It is still worthwhile to pledge. So make sure you do that. Make sure you do that. Um,
We got some cool people coming, man. It's gonna be cool.
well, another one just got announced today or
Saw
yesterday.
that, yeah. Saw
Yeah,
that.
and I cannot I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. There have been some hateful and negative comments in the announcements that we have made across various platforms. And to those people, all I can say is fuck you because it's real easy to sit on your keyboard and criticize others for taking a chance and having the courage to put themselves out there when there's no way in hell that you would ever do it.
Yeah.
even if they can't, even if it doesn't happen, these guys still deserve all the credit in the world because at least they had the fucking guts to try. And the
I
thing of
mean,
it is, I know what's happening behind the scenes. Like it's going to happen. I'm extremely confident that it's going to happen. But and I told the guys, I said, I actually told Nick Shawin from the Goosebumps Crew podcast, I said, you know what we should do? When we actually do get the event, like when we're actually there, when we're at the convention, we should take screenshots of all those comments and flip them the bird.
yeah, I mean that'd be sweet. Get him on like
Yeah,
the
because it's like,
on the main stage on like a big screen.
oh yeah, and I think we're gonna do it. I'm
I
pretty
mean, at
sure
the
we're
end of
gonna
the
do it.
day, who's gonna be chilling with Wolverine? Us or some hater on the internet?
Well, I told the guys, I said, listen, we're all gonna be laughing at these guys, at these people when you're doing a live podcast with the cast of The Haunted Mask minus one actor because apparently he doesn't want to be found.
Oh,
But
fair enough.
when you've got Catherine Long and Catherine Short and Amos Crowley up on stage and you're having a Haunted Mask reunion 29 years later and we're
I
all having a blast and these motherfuckers are still putting hate comments on YouTube and I just realized I didn't plug in my laptop, so bear with me 1 second.
Oh, no problem.
Oh shit.
That's never a good sign.
I left my cable at work. Hang on, how much battery do I have? So I feel like we should get back to Harry Potter, but real quick, I'm going to cram in the next sponsor. So whether you love or hate Harry Potter, we can all agree you will probably love this book. Revival, book one of the Unveiled book series. I'll be honest, this is not my typical cup of tea because this is urban fantasy. It's a stellar book. Um, the world building is done in a very seamless way. And actually, you can watch the interview I do with Debbie Lynn, the author, on the Arte podcast. And I actually gave credit, massive credit, because the way he integrates magic into the real world is along with the main character. So you as a reader are experiencing it much like Tori, our heroine is. And what's funny
Oh,
about it, because in the first couple of chapters, it's still all new and weird. But by the time you
yeah.
get to like by the time you get to, I'd say after the first half of the book, somebody does magical shit and you're just like, oh, well, yeah, of course, that's something that people do here. And I realized that when I was finishing up the book and I was like, I went from being like, huh, that's interesting to like, well, yeah, of course.
Interesting.
Of course you
That's a
would cast that spell.
sign of strong world building for sure.
But here's the thing, and this is why I highly recommend you uh, pick up this book, and it's the second link in the description, is because I guarantee you, because this is the first print that you can buy on Amazon right now, I guarantee you this could legitimately be one of the next big film franchises. I'm not joking, and I'm not blowing smoke up the author's ass because she's a friend and I like her. I'm being 100%. This could be the next like Divergent series of films because this is not a young adult
Interesting.
novel. This is very much and it's not an adult like smut novel or anything like that. But teenagers and adults could appreciate this book. This could definitely be a Hollywood movie, and when it does, if and when it does, it's probably going to go through a reprint, and there will probably be editorial changes to it. So I highly recommend getting the first version. It's kind of like how after the Lord of the Rings was published, The Hobbit went in and changed the Riddles in the Dark chapter to coincide.
Really?
Yeah, to coincide with Lord of the Rings. So there will be
Oh,
changes to this book. I I
interesting.
I, I very much believe that. And then the second book is supposed to be out in around New Year's, and Debbie Lynn will be at one weekend at Horrorland too. So you can buy your book and have her sign it, and you can be cool like me and have. Oh, you can't. Yeah, you can see it.
Oh, there it is. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's one of my most prized possessions because I got a signed copy before she hits it big, and she's going to because I was shocked how good the book was. I'll put it to you that way.
It sounds cool. It sounds cool.
It's very good. It's well, no, how do I want to say that? You don't dislike Harry Potter.
No,
You have some issues with not the formatting, but you have some nitpicks basically.
sort of. I mean, they're things that I consist like I call them quirks. Quirks that she has
Quirks.
in her writing that when you listen to these books, or I always say experience, but when you're listening to them like one after the other, they compound. You're by book 7, you like, well, it's really by like book 4 and 5, you really notice that like these books kind of follow a formula of like there's the opening of the book where he's not at the school, he gets to the school, they kind of meander around for like 2/3 of the book, and then the final 3 chapters happen. Like they're all just kind of, with the exception of the 7th book, which is, in my opinion, ungodly slow. Like it's a lot of like sitting around and waiting for stuff to happen, kind of story.
Kind of like the movie, but part one, because it's so ironic. The 7th book is my second least favorite book, but this Deathly Hallows Part Two is my favorite movie of the whole franchise.
Interesting. I mean, my favorite movie is the first one. That's my favorite one.
It's good.
Um,
It's good. There, but that one, I I like Chris Columbus, but sometimes, and I don't mean this as a dig at all, but sometimes his movies can come off as somewhat not juvenile, youthful. A little too
yeah, like
youthful for
whimsy,
my
too
taste.
too much whimsy.
Whimsy. That's the
Yeah,
perfect word. But here's my ultimate defense of Harry Potter. Are you ready?
yeah, always.
As of now, Harry Potter, the Harry Potter series has been published in 80 languages and with over 500 million copies sold across the world.
Wow, wow.
So, scoreboard.
I mean, my other thing with it, and I don't think this speaks to the quality, and this is a thing that I find a lot of people disagree on. But I don't think it speaks to the quality of her writing, but I would say that prejudices are definitely baked into the cake, as it were. Well, I certainly there's language in those books that's definitely fat phobic. Like just certainly her like intent,
I don't
like it
know
just
about
feels
that.
like it.
I don't think Harry's ever like,
I don't think
Harry.
Harry's fat phobic.
No,
I think
I was
the
gonna say
narrator
Harry.
probably
I was
is.
gonna say Harry never put a hot dog on a string and been like, "Come here, Duddus."
I
It was never like that. It was like, well, maybe if you exercise a little bit, you could outrun them Dementors.
mean,
I don't know why Harry's Cockney, but
yeah, he became. But it's like, yeah, every book, it's like she takes some dig at either Dudley or Uncle Vernon. How they're that, and what was the other one that was really obvious? Oh, her stance on or several of the characters being weirdly pro-slavery. Like the books are like the book Hermione's like, yeah, maybe owning slaves is a bad thing, and and
yeah, and
and
like
and
a
Ron's
wizard,
like,
and there's some
and the
wizards who are
book,
like, "Oh my God, they are the Confederacy."
yeah, but they like being slaves. That's the Ron, but they like being slaves.
I
Ooh,
didn't get that
Ron.
vibe from him.
Yeah, take.
I literally got the Lost Cause narrative from Ron being like, "It's just how we've always done it, isn't it?"
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and the books try to treat Hermione like she's wrong, even
It
though
is,
like, yeah,
it is,
she's
yeah.
right. Yeah, she's right.
It is kind of one step away from being like, well, who's gonna pick the cotton?
Pretty much yeah, like I can't think of what exactly the comparison would be, but yeah, the Weasleys are a particular kind of like they look the other, like they're not great. Like they want to pretend they're great. Like it's weird because their whole thing is that like wizard supremacy is bad, except for this like one small portion of it.
Only
That
over,
portion of wizard supremacy is okay.
only over people.
Yeah, yeah. The
Fuck
creatures, it's fine.
the
George,
house
by the way,
elves.
George's just off screen laughing at me, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that is kind of a. I think it's done in the book. I think it's done more for. Well, no, I mean they do kind of make Hermione a bit of a like.
She's been a real drag about it. Like Hermione, stop talking about the slaves. We get
When in
it. They're
reality,
they're
everyone should be like, yeah, this is
yeah.
totally fucked up.
The weirdest thing in the which one was it? The second one, where the woman is half human, half house elf, and you're like, who fucked a house elf?
Yeah, well, okay.
But the consent on that is dubious for me. It makes me uncomfortable. She's not capable of proper consent, Jake. I just
Well,
she
no,
has to say yes.
I can't believe I'm not defending this, but I feel like I'm defending the point. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you meant. Well, how do we know the mother was the house elf?
Okay, fair. But even then, the house elf who had relations with the human still can't consent.
Okay, fair. Well, I mean, technically they can, just not from a legal perspective.
Exactly.
Because I
Or
mean,
I don't know, or a
Dobby
moral
could.
one maybe.
I mean, Dobby could be like, He likes big butts and he cannot lie.
Okay, Dobby's fair. Dobby's fair game. He's a free elf. He can't consent. I mean, he doesn't have an understanding of it. But that was
That's
one of the
true.
things where I'm
So
like, that movie made this whole thing about date rape, and I'm like, the elf's lack of consent.
we get on house elf
Consent.
statutory.
I don't know. It's not even in the books, and we
That's
agreed that those movies are bad.
well, I mean, to be fair, they're not allowed to have clothes.
I mean, I'm just saying, they're
Well,
not
no,
allowed to have clothes.
I guess he covers up with the pillowcase. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
allowed to have clothes.
that's taken a turn. We should divert. Um, the movies, if nothing else, did give us several iconic moments and launched the career
Oh
of
yeah.
Daniel Radcliffe, a very talented actor, if ever there was one.
I-
I love when he's doing his quirky weird roles, and I love that he gets to do that
Yes.
because he has the fuck you Harry Potter money.
Yes, absolutely. He got to do whatever he wanted to do. I mean, he did the naked horse fucking play. He did.
Have
Uh,
you seen Miracle Workers?
I've seen clips of it. It's not on anything that I have. I want to watch it so badly.
Dude,
It's up
it's
there.
so funny. I watched it for Daniel Radcliffe. The concept is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Actually, no, I take that back. I remember why I wanted to watch it because I saw an ad for season 2 where he plays the prince with the pet duck, and he's holding he's like he's feeding the duck as he's the prince running, and the duck's eating really fast. He goes, "Oh, stop! You're gonna get a tummy ache."
I mean,
It's
I
so
mean,
stupid, and
the Weird
but
Al movie. The Weird Al
I
movie.
haven't watched it yet, and I need to because I have Roku. I need to watch it.
Oh, it's
Um,
so
but
good.
I will just say this: Daniel Radcliffe has this uncanny ability to be hilarious with the most mundane shit. Because in season one
Yeah.
of Miracle Workers, he works in the Department of Miracles, but he does little shit. Like he gets super excited showing his job, and he's watching a woman or a man. I can't remember if it's a man or a woman, but they drop their car keys in the snow, and they're trying to find them, and he's like pausing like a leaf to blow out of the way or like some snow to melt, and he's getting all like excited about it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get it," and I'm like, only Daniel Radcliffe could pull this off. It is so
Oh,
fucking funny.
he was in I can't remember which one it was. One of Ricky Gervais's shows, but I think it was Extras, where it's him and I don't remember what he's shooting, but he's in like this Boy Scout uniform, and the whole gag is that he's a little prick, and he keeps trying to he's trying to have sex with the one woman, and he's like, you want to go? You have a cigarette? I smoke when I'm not on. And it's just the whole gag. He's this awful person, and every time someone walks by, he's like, "What? He's trying to offer me cigarettes. What's wrong with her?" It's so good. It's so funny. I'm pretty sure it's extra. It's so good.
And
He's so
he's
funny.
he's brilliant in Horns. That's such a great movie.
That movie is good up until the ending. I think the ending ruins it.
You know what? Fair. It didn't end it didn't ruin it for me, but I could see it. Um, so closing statements because I am running low on battery and I feel so
There.
stupid. I've been so scatterbrained today. I'm not surprised that I did this, but and we're back. Sorry about that, folks. You didn't see the big gap in time. For you, it was instantaneous, like magic. But for us, it was about an hour and a half. Because someone who, for the first time ever, left his computer's power cord in his office. Like a dumbass.
I'm on the desktop. I don't have those kind of problems, but my computer sucks, so I get it.
But and it's funny because we did it almost snapped me back into reality though, because we didn't derail so much as we got off topic, but a fun topic. But to get back into the Harry Potter debate, because honestly, we haven't debated too much, but I think I know why, because I'm not sure what direction you're coming from, so I have a question for you.
Sure.
The issues with Harry Potter, are they the content of the books or the quality of the books?
I think it's the quality, not the con. I don't have an issue with the content other than like I will note that she does have some of, like I said before, some of her personal prejudices are baked into it. I don't think that's indicative of quality though. Like I would I'm the type of person where I'm capable of separating art from artist. So even if I disagree with her like whatever views, I can separate the art from that.
Yeah,
But my issues with the
it's kind of like how R. Kelly's a weird ass piece of shit, but I Believe I Can Fly is an amazing song.
I mean, yeah, or I mean, the one I always go to is Orson Scott Card in Ender's Game. Dude didn't love the gay people. But I still love Ender's Game. So like, I also like Harry Potter, but my thesis is overall, and I say this for my podcast as well, is that you can be critical of the things you love while still loving them.
Sure.
Um,
I guess that's why I wanted to frame the question though, because really, because we kind of agreed on some of the narrative problems, and I actually listened to one commentary, but she was going over the problems of like content in the books, and I'm like, yeah, I like it always comes back to though it's a young adult novel. Like
yeah.
this is not heavy reading, so I I don't really condemn or defend J.K. Rowling. It's her book at the end of the day, but you can make the argument that take it all in, take don't take it too seriously because this is a book for 12-year-olds, but
Oh, for sure. And but I also would say that you can, in my opinion anyway, um, you can separate the content of the books and how they're written and their style from, like, it's inarguable that these books had a cultural impact.
oh
And like
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like people
that's
are trying to take that away from this franchise. And I understand that's hard to do while the person is still alive, but like I think the best thing that they I think she whether people want to say it's for ill or nil, brings a certain amount of baggage to that franchise that I imagine that they're probably looking to ditch.
well, and so there's a couple of other parts to that too. So in terms of criticizing the content of Rowling's books, yes, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, let's remember too. So one person wrote these books, and you cannot expect one person to be 100%, and I mean politically correct in the sense of like they think of every possible eventuality of how their
Oh,
work will be taken. Like that's just not
sure.
realistic. Because I was just thinking of another example, and it's like another very popular series, um, the Goosebumps book series. Um, I can't recall a single book not starring like a white character.
True. True.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
here's the thing though, I'm not saying R.L. Stein is a racist. It's just like between him and the book cover illustrators, it's like I'm not familiar with any. I know R.L. Stein is white, like,
Yeah.
and you know, and I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, but most of the time, we when we create something, it's representative of our upbringing. And if you grew up in, Ohio in the 60s and 70s, depending on where you lived, you may or may not have seen that many black people,
True.
and Ohio, New Jersey, anywhere in the Midwest or like the certain areas of the East Coast. I'm trying not to dig a hole here. Um, it's not a good thing, but it's not necessarily like you should go to hell for it thing.
Yeah.
And we've come a very long way, but at the same time, race is not a central theme in the Goosebumps books. So while R.L. Stein, not to my knowledge, R.L. Stein has never come out and said this character is white, but they're often perceived as white, which may have more than a little bit to do with the fact that the television series was shot in, I believe, Vancouver, Canada, right?
Either that, yeah, for either that or probably Toronto. I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
That's a question for the Goosebumps guys.
yeah, they would know either one or the other. You know what I mean? So and again,
Yeah.
we've come a long way, thankfully, and it's worth noting that J.K. Rowling does seem to have some not racist themes, but like there's a theme of like a racial hierarchy that
Oh yeah.
well, but she says in the book is wrong. Like it's clearly stated that this is not a good thing, but it is there. But it is not along the same race lines as the Muggle world because there are black characters, there are Indian characters, and there are like Kingsley comes to mind, the Patil sisters, Dean Thomas, like
I mean, you named your Chinese character Cho
oh
Chang.
Cho.
I mean, I,
But okay, but let's
but it's like I think that shit's for me that doesn't offend me so much as I think it's fair game to make fun of her for.
I mean, yes and no, because that's assuming that. So, like, Glee, yeah, as a television show, and they probably did this as kind of like an in joke, like a little wink. But there are two characters who are of Chinese descent. Or I think, well, no, I think Tina in the show is of Chinese descent, even though I'm pretty sure Jenna Ushkowitz is of Korean descent, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you have two Asian characters that who have the last name Chang, although one is hyphenated because her name is Tina Cohen Chang. And but this show was written by like three of the most like liberal snowflakes on planet Earth at the time. And
True. Also true.
they still make a ton of racist jokes in that show.
I'm the kind of person where like look, man, I wouldn't I'd be lying if I said I didn't come from the South Park style of it's all okay or none of it's okay.
Sure.
Um
Yeah, but I guess that's the point I'm making is people will tear somebody like J.K. Rowling a new one over something like that, but then give Ryan Murphy a free pass because he's gay.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's unfair. And I also think like certain like holding someone like to task over fantasy tropes that are technically in their historical basis. Like for example, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the goblins and how they yeah. And like I well on the one hand, I get it, I do, but like that's a yeah, it's an old stereotype and everyone utilizes them. So is it fair to pick on her for that when everyone else when like I say Tolkien is using goblin whatever, you know what I mean? Like I don't think that's necessarily fair. But I would also say when it comes to writing from other people's perspectives, we talked about the fifth book. Another shorthand me and Jordan always joke. We call that book the book where Harry's a dick
Yeah, I mean that's true. But I find
because
that very
J.K.
but
Rowling. Sorry, I
I,
was just gonna
I
say.
I
Go
find it
ahead.
appropriate. I find it appropriate to the story though because Harry turns 15 in that book, and he's just going through his teenage rage.
Well, that's my thing with that book is there's a lot of moments throughout that franchise where it's a what I'm guessing it I don't know J.K. Rowling's exact age, but like middle-aged woman trying to write from the perspective of a teenage boy, and there's just a lot of moments where like maybe it's because I was a teenage boy, but like it just doesn't feel like she under like it's just a lot of like angst for the sake of angst, like
Well,
it just
so I have to. I mean that is a thing. Um, I will defend it here in a second, but I have to share this because it's so funny. When I was still married, my ex-wife got very into the 50 Shades of Grey series. Now, those books are atrocious. The first one's
yeah.
not, well, I was gonna say it's not, it is awful, but compared to the other books, it's actually readable because like I did read the first one and I was like,
Really? I've never read them.
I
Can't do
don't,
it.
no, they're not good. But and here's the thing though, even people that love those books will tell you they're not well
I
written.
will say though, I do have a funny story about them. When I was visiting a friend in our capital city, I live in British Columbia, so I was visiting her in Victoria. Victoria is kind of like an older city with like an older population, and in the middle of the city, there's this like classy, like high end bookstore. And I walk in, and the centerpiece of their whole store is Fifty Shades of Grey. And I picked it up, read two passages. I was like, whoa, that's smutty. And I put it down.
They're like,
It just wasn't the
whoa.
kind of bookstore. I was like, whoa, this is
It's
not that kind of book.
It
Like,
was it was the world's classiest smut novel. But
yeah,
so the funny part though is eventually E.L. James, the author, because there were three books, and then she ran out of material, but they wanted to, keep that money train a flowing. So she rewrote the first book from the perspective of the male lead, and I took a look at the size of the book, and I said, this is going to be hilarious because this is a woman writing a sexual book from a man's perspective. And
yeah. There's no way she's.
just for shits and giggles, I read a couple of chapters and I ended up putting it down and I looked at her dead in the eye and I said, she is giving men way too much credit because
That's funny.
he's like constantly thinking and he has an inner monologue. I'm like, she's clearly never understood the male brain
Yeah, no.
because he's like it's so off base, but and she may not be off base. What it truly is, those books are just their female wish fulfillment. And her rewriting the first novel from a male's perspective, I realized is this isn't what she thinks them. This is probably not what she thinks the male brain is. This is what women wish the male brain was.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of Harry Potter, I would say that her idea of male teenage angst is they're just mean. Like they're just mean and rude, and that's her entire concept of teenage angst
I
is that
mean,
they
but
don't listen.
well, but that okay, so that's my defense of book 5, where I think you're right. I think she is a little, but I mean, she is a woman. She never grew up as a teenage boy. And even if J.K. Rowling had been a man, he would not have grown up as a teenage boy in the early 2000s. So it still
No,
probably would have been somewhat off base, but here's my
although
defense. Oh,
those
go
books
ahead.
do take place in the 90s. Fair.
Not the fifth one.
Because isn't the first one like 90? I guess, yeah, 2000. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, because the first one's 95, I think, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong.
It might
95,
be. So yeah,
97.
well, so by book 5, you'd be looking at 2000, 2001.
Oh,
Um,
George just said he was born in 91. Harry
Harry?
Potter. Yeah.
Well, that can't be. That doesn't make any sense because then by the time the first book came out, it would be
I thought he was 91. I thought it was 90. Oh, so now I don't know. This is one of those, I'm doing one of those things where I'm going freehand without looking.
no, Harry would have been born in 1987. I don't
Jo-
know. Anyway.
All right, Jordan says he's wrong. 1980.
Oh, okay, so they do. Okay,
Oh,
so
that's first 1980.
they're telling the story. Oh, okay, so in that case, okay, it would have been the 90s, but regardless, my defense of that book is okay, so the theme is Harry is pretty pissed. The general reason he's pissed is because he feels like he's being left out, right? And
Yeah.
in order to prove that he is ready, he, Hermione, and Ron create Dumbledore's army. They're constantly butting into the operations that the adults in the room are taking care of, and all they're doing is trying to keep him safe, and it blows up in his face. So much so that he loses Sirius because of his own stupidity. Because and
Here's sorry.
Harry learns a very, very valuable lesson in book 5 in that up until that point he and his group are always they're always making the assumption that they're the only ones who know, and yet
Yeah.
in book 5 they finally get it because the truth of the matter is that had generally speaking had they just left shit alone the adults would have taken care of it.
Yep.
the
You're right. Yeah.
the one exception might be. Well, okay, that's not true. Half the time, if they'd left well enough alone, because like Prisoner of Azkaban honestly wouldn't have turned out the same way if they weren't involved. Um, and also, although
Probably
Sirius Black technically still would have been freed, he just wouldn't
true.
have been presumed innocent. Actually, you know what? I take that back because Dumbledore didn't really need a lot of convincing, so he probably figured that Sirius was innocent. And then maybe the Chamber of Secrets, although I still maintain that had they left well enough alone, they probably would have figured it out, and Dumbledore would have been able to take care of it
Yeah. I
along with
mean,
the other faculty.
it tends to be that in those books and movies that the kids are just ahead. It's not so much that they're figuring it out. They're smarter. They're just faster because they're on the ground and there,
Well, I don't even think that's necessarily true because think about it
or they
this
have more
way.
time.
Well, think about it this way too. Like they just so happen to get through all the traps, but the reason the professors are there in the first place is because Snape knows that Quirrell is going after the thing.
True, true.
You know,
And
and
also,
that
to be fair, I was gonna say the Harry and Ron are significantly smarter in the books than they are in the movie. They lose a lot of
the
agency in the movies.
this is true. But the point I'm making about the fifth one is Harry being angstily angry is what bites him in the ass narratively, and he learns the lesson, and it's a hard lesson. Um, so Harry does grow with each book, right? The exception might be the first one, just because he's getting acquainted with the world. But he does grow with every book, and he's a lot more cooperative in the sixth book and lets Dumbledore take the lead.
Yes, but also one could argue. Look, I'm an even minded person. So one could argue that that is also to his detriment in that book as well, because that blind trust ultimately is what causes like the back, like But then that I guess that also turns out to be all part of Dumbledore's plan because he wants to be killed anyway. So like,
I was gonna say these are all things that needed to happen, and then by the time Harry is able to take charge in book 7, and even then he doesn't do it alone, but by that point he has learned through various losses and lessons that he can't do it alone, but some things are up to him. You know what I mean?
True.
If that makes
True.
sense. And Harry being angsty and angry in book five is what leads to those lessons. And that's kind of part and parcel to how I defend the books because people have criticisms of the books in a vacuum, but if you look at the whole overarching story, a lot of times these serve a purpose. Like you mentioned the slavery of the house elves. Now they and to Rowling's fault, she kind of starts to go into how wrong that is, but then there's a pretty sharp turn, with the exception of Dobby.
Yeah.
But
Dobby to me is not. I mean, he's better in the books, but he's. In order to make that point, I just don't think he's a strong enough character, or he's not around enough, in my opinion, to be an example of that free elf. He just
well,
kind of
Dobby,
disappears for
yeah,
4 books and then comes back.
well, Dobby's just the noble savage, right? At
Yeah,
the end of the
true.
day, because he's the exception, right? Because it's pretty clearly stated that the house elves enjoy being enslaved. I think it what's the what is it? Winky, her name? What's
Yeah,
yeah?
that's part of it's a subplot. That's when they first introduced it. That's where I said Ron. I think Ron literally says at one point they like being slaves, Hermione. Um, and yeah, that's yeah, and I that I get they're magical creatures, but in terms of like a narrative device, it doesn't sound great when you're like most of the characters in this universe are and they're never challenged. Like Hermione is the one who's wrong in most of the scenarios, and they're never challenged with that prejudice. I think maybe that's, but also again, it is also a book for children, so it's like.
I
But my
think
argument to my point to that would be though by the 7th book she's trying to pretend the shit's deep, and like by the 7th book she's like Nazi allegories that I'm denying. That's my biggest thing with her. She's like there's fascism allegories that she wants to pretend aren't fascism allegories. Like she's like it's not there. Voldemort isn't a metaphor for Hitler, and it's like right.
well, Voldemort. I think calling him a Hitler allegory is a little too on the nose because Voldemort is simply just a metaphor for totalitarian superiority, which is not exclusive to Germany. It's just the most famous.
True, a metaphor so nice she did it twice. I
Although
mean, I will say, sorry.
I did watch a video where she realized that it Dumbledore's no, I'm sorry, not Dumbledore, that Voldemort is again defeated in the second Wizarding World, and she the second Wizarding War, and she says, "Wait, Wizarding War Two, World War Two. God damn it!"
Yeah, I've seen so many like interviews with her where she like, yeah, she had no. I'm like, how could you not know? Like, she had no idea. She didn't even see it. Like, how did you not see it? I don't get it, um, but to compliment,
She could either be lying or maybe so that'll happen with inspiration a lot. I forget what they call it. I'm
oh
having a brain
yeah,
fart. Where like you've made the connection subconsciously, but you don't actively think about it. Like she didn't set out to create a Hitler metaphor, but because she knows who Adolf Hitler is and what happened, she's like, oh yeah, totalitarianism.
I mean
I'm
that's
trying to think of
completely
another.
fair
So
because like,
Attack on Titan, for example. Um, they still swear they still swear that it wasn't a direct like Nazi and Jews I don't know. Have you watched Attack on Titan?
I'm not in its entirety, but I'm familiar with the direction it goes, and I know that it has a lot of like there's a lot of German in it.
Well, there's a lot of
Not allegory. What's the word I'm looking for? Illusions, German illusions. That's what I'm looking for.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. When they say that it's not a direct allegory between the Nazis and the Jews, I don't believe them. They,
Yeah,
I mean,
believe you say
even
that.
by the time you get to the big reveal being that the people in Paradise and all that, and damn it, I'm forgetting the names. What's the name of the country? Marley?
I didn't get
Marley?
that far.
I can't remember. Anyway,
Not enough to
long
know
story
by
short,
name now.
but like the uniforms and the armbands and the armband looks suspiciously like a six-pointed star, although it's not directly. I mean, it's just and yeah, it's not a direct beat for beat like copy, but it's very close. It's
I
very
mean,
close.
to tap back to Harry Potter, that's sort of like how in the fourth movie they're wearing KKK hoods, and then mysteriously in the next one they're just not. Like somebody realized mid production, like crap, they look like KKK hoods. Shit. Um, but I will say in regards to the fifth book, for however much criticism I have of like that's the one where Harry's a dick. I know we talked about Daniel Radcliffe. He really smoothes out and like brings nuance to that character where it's like, yeah, he was a teenage boy, so now all that angst for me becomes more believable, like coming out of him. Like, say what you will about Harry Potter, or about Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter. In my opinion, he took some of the parts I don't necessarily love about that character in the books and like made them, for lack of a better word, palatable.
Well, yeah, and that's I will say his outbursts in the movie feel a lot more natural and organic.
Yes.
And honestly, some of them kind of make sense because like when the group is all talking in front of him and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Not for
Yeah.
nothing, I am the motherfucker he's trying to kill." You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of those books are like someone pointed it out to me, and it was something I never noticed, but I couldn't unnotice. It was how like huge chunks of the book are like the three characters are for some reason mad at each other and won't speak to each other. Like it happens in almost every
Oh,
single book.
and I remember that was one of the things that came off. I'm trying to remember how it came off in the book. I remember it being extremely awkward in the movie, but mostly because they were like they didn't show Emma Watson's side boob, but they implied Emma
Oh
Watson's
yeah,
side
yeah.
boob.
When she's naked in the it's the third one, not
and
the
make
third one, no, the seventh one, the seventh one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and making out with and making out with like the other astral like
But Harry, it
projection
was
projection of Harry in like a way that like two people that clearly don't want to make out with each other are being forced to at
yeah,
gunpoint.
yeah. I felt the same way about her and Rupert Grint when it came time for them to have. But to be fair, that's a criticism I have of the sixth book. Is I remember feeling when I first read that book that Ginny and Harry come completely out of nowhere. I hated it when I first read it. I hate it to this day. And
No, they
Jordan
didn't come out of nowhere. They didn't come out of nowhere
Jordan,
at
see,
all.
Jordan swears to me this a similar thing, and I this the second time I listened to it, I always listened to it. I was listening to it for five books. I was like, where's the lead up to this? And I swear to God, there's
It's
none. It's just all of a
it's
sudden they're making out in the room of requirement, and I hate it.
no, dude, it's literally laid out starting with the first book because Ginny's shy around him, and then in the second one, Harry literally saves her, and it grows from there.
I will acknowledge it is less out of nowhere in the books than it is in the movie, where they have had
I'm talking about the books.
the movie it's even worse, but I've never liked them as a couple. It was just all of a sudden he's got weird feelings towards Ginny. I don't like it. And then I think someone else pointed this out to me, and they're like brother and sister. It's weird. I don't like them as a couple. I've never liked them as a couple.
I
That's not really
just
a commentary on the writing. It's just a writing choice I don't like.
I just love the fact that it's strongly implied that Harry has yellow fever until he doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Because
yeah,
he is like all about Cho, and then
yeah,
out of nowhere
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like,
Like I'm not loving the taste of betrayal on your lips. Wait, she was the one who betrayed them, right? Pretty
yes.
sure. Yeah.
He was
Um,
it was like, you bitch.
Yeah, and they also I'm surprised you didn't bring up the fact that the movies they take away all of Ron's best moments and gives them to Hermione so she can be a girl boss.
Well, I mean, I'm defending Harry Potter. I'm not going to point out
um,
I'm not going to point out that particular shortcoming. Um,
poor Ron. He sure gets. But to me,
they
I love Rupert Grint though. My favorite part about Rupert Grint about is how Ron's supposed to be this gangly guy, and Rupert Grint got jacked between like the fifth and so in the seventh movie he's massive.
I do love the movies, the fact that they are a time capsule of hairstyles as they go along because
Oh yeah.
by movie 4, all the boys have like long skater hair and it
I
is
called that one.
hilarious.
I called the one with that. I call that one the one with the bad haircuts.
It's the emo one. It's the
Yeah,
emo
yeah,
movie.
yeah. But
Like,
that I like that. See, that's my favorite book though. That's why I'm so upset that movie's not that
really? It's
great.
your favorite book?
I really like the reveal. That twist blew my mind. It's either that one or I mean, it's hard not to love the first one, but yeah, I really love the mystery of it. And I love the reveal, and I love how that's one of those ones that's fun to listen to when you know the twist, because they do. There's lots of really good. Oh man, I'm supposed to be the anti-Harry Potter guy, but there's a lot of really good foreshadowing in that book
I know we've kind of
with Mad Eye
switched,
Moody.
haven't we?
Well, I
I
mean, it's
do.
hard to dispute. I love that story, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's hard to ignore, especially when you're listening to it all at once. It's hard to ignore all of the it's little things. It's like Death by a Thousand Cuts, where like you start to notice all these little
It's
um
death by a thousand paper cuts.
yeah, exactly. Where it's like,
You're,
oh, by the seventh book. Actually,
yeah,
by
you're
the was by the fourth one.
just ow,
Ow, ow.
ow,
Why is
ow,
the World Cup section so long? Like it goes on forever. That's my main
ow.
thing with those books. They're like, especially like towards the end, like overindulgent. This series could have been like 10 books and it would have been better paced in my opinion. Like the fourth and fifth book should have been like 2 books each. Like she had enough ideas in those books and they're all interesting ideas. It's just a lot of like one of those cases for me where it's a lot of good ideas not as explored as much as they could be. The stuff with Voldemort's background. Like to me, that feels so underexplored. Like I think he is an interesting character that
Well,
doesn't get enough.
it's underexplored because he's the bad guy. He's the heel. Because the more you learn about, and see, you do, and this is kind of lost today because and this is why I cut up Disney all the time. Like Disney doesn't believe in evil villains anymore, and most of Hollywood doesn't, because all the villains now are just good people with tragic backstories that turn them to the dark side, right? And part of that is the more you develop a character, the more potential you have for sympathy. Or if you
Fair
do it,
enough.
if you do it in a way where you reveal more about a bad character, but you keep them like 100% bad, then it's called bad writing because
Yeah.
it is. Because pure evil is cartoony if it's explained too much. And
True.
it
True.
could be, it could,
True.
because it's hard, I'll admit it. It's very hard to have a strictly evil villain not be a cartoon character.
Yeah, but also to be fair, sometimes like I don't know. I think the movie version of that character is a cartoon character.
I mean,
Um,
he is to a point.
like
Actually, well, no, not to a point, because some of my favorite unintentionally hilarious moments are Voldemort, because you have the what's the laugh, the
yeah.
or
Always. Oh, I can touch you.
I
Yeah,
was
he's
just
got
gonna say
so many great
I
lines.
can touch you now. It sounds like Jim Carrey's Grinch actually when he does it. He's like I can touch you now.
True. And like in the book, he like you lose there's so much of his nuance and what makes that character compelling and interesting. It gets as much as I hate to say, it gets lost like from those books. Like I think there's a lot of moments in the history of that universe that are underexplored. Like I would watch a movie about World Wizard War 2, where it's like the original Dumbledore's army, and it's like Harry's parents, and it's about fighting Voldemort when he's at the height of his powers. Like I think that could be an interesting story. Like I don't think Harry Potter is devoid of interesting storytelling. Yeah, for me, it's largely it's the delivery of the storytelling in the case of the books. And in the case of the movies, just sometimes they cut things for the sake of adaptation, where it's like, yeah, by the sixth one, there's so much that gets cut out of that movie, and it just ceases to make sense at a certain point. Like that movie, yeah, that movie, in my opinion, stops. It does it cuts out too much of the book, so a lot of stuff gets lost for the next movie. Like all that stuff with like the gaunts and all that stuff. That stuff, listening to it this time because I was listening to it, was so much more interesting and compelling to me than it was the first time.
So I guess what we can take away from this is you really don't dislike Harry Potter.
Oh no,
You're
I
not,
don't.
yeah, you're just not blind to, because everything has faults, and it's heresy. Even Tolkien has faults. Nothing is
What?
perfect. I know. It's if you've ever read this Silmarillion, you know Tolkien has faults.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah, fair. Yeah, it's
Oh.
fair.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Overall, sorry.
It's a great book. It's worth reading, but it's rough. It's a rough
Isn't it
book to read.
like a Lord of the Rings encyclopedia? Like to my understanding of that, it's super dense, like crazy
So
dense.
I I kind of compare it. it's a terrible comparison, but I think it actually makes sense. So the Lord of the you've seen the Prince of Egypt, I assume, the movie.
Yes. Yes,
So
I have. Yes.
the Prince of Egypt is Lord of the Rings, and the Bible is the Silmarillion.
Oh, okay. 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 That's okay. Yeah, fair enough. Fair
Because the
enough.
Prince of
Okay.
Egypt is this like really great masterpiece, and it's a
High
fantastic movie.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, but there's the rest of the story out there, and it's written. I mean, the Silmarillion is very much written like
Appendix?
well, no, kind of like I was gonna say like the Bible in a way, but more like it's written more like the Norse sagas.
Interesting.
But
I could see the comparison to the Bible because it
yeah,
is
I mean
technically, is it not the Bible for Lord of the Rings
kind of
in a
sorta.
way?
It's more yeah, I guess. If you're looking at it, if you view the Bible more as the story of the Jewish people and then the beginning of the Christian faith, yes, it's very similar. If you're I wouldn't say the Silmarillion is like a beat for beat like religious text, but it reads like a religious history.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, because it
And
does
to be,
explain everything.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I never said I didn't like Harry Potter. My point was that I thought it was badly written, which I still maintain. And I still maintain there are elements of those books that are, I mean, overall badly written. But
Well,
there's also
to
parts I think it's even minded to be like they're also again indisputably I cannot take away I will never take away from its cultural impact. I know there are other people out there who want to, and
but
I know that was your point.
yeah, but see, I will say this. I cannot agree with that they are poorly written, and the reason I say that is because I mean I can be a smartass and be like, 500 million copies sold, but no, what I can say is these books enthralled multiple generations and got them. I mean, I remember getting these books and not being able to put them down. Like,
Fair.
and poorly written books don't do that. Sorry, not
I
sorry.
do I will say I do take issue with those people who are like they were bad the whole time. Like
Nah,
no, like to say that is disingenuous. We didn't think they were bad the whole time.
people
Like
don't show up and wait in line for hours because remember people used to do this before we
I
had
did.
the
I
oh
picked up the sixth and seventh book at a midnight release. I'm not going to pretend
I
otherwise.
absolutely did. But I mean, they didn't have Amazon pre-order back then. And believe you me, if you didn't, you may not get it for months after
Oh
release.
yeah, I remember
That
lining
happened
up
with
at
me in the sixth
chapters.
book. Yeah, that happened to me with the sixth book. I had to wait to get
Yeah,
my
yeah,
copy
yeah, yeah.
because I missed it.
Yeah, I pre-ordered that one. But my overall point with this is that I don't believe anything is beyond reproach, and it drives me. I've got so much shit from like fanatical Harry Potter fans who want to like try to be like no, it's pure and it's 100% and there's nothing. But no, you can approach things with a critical eye, and that's when I listened to this last time. I was like, I want to see if I notice these things and like if there's anything critically I can notice about them, like I do with anything. And I think yeah, like anything you can find something critical to say about it, but that doesn't
Absolutely.
necessarily take a. I will I again I can't stand people who want to take away the cultural impact and take away people's enjoyment of it from a nostalgic. I still enjoy these from a nostalgic point, like. I still love watching the movies. I still love reading the books. Like I still love experiencing this franchise. But I'm also a cynical asshole, and I like criticizing things.
I mean, I think, but the kind of criticism, and to your credit, the criticism you do, unless you're doing it for a laugh, which we do too, it's never actually mean-spirited. Well, I take that back. Sometimes I am mean-spirited, but I mean,
I can be.
it has to be absolute dog shit for me to be, for it to be mean-spirited coming from me. Like so bad. Like I tore Wednesday a new one because it's not a good show. It's not.
I took a lot of shit for saying that looked bad. I made a couple of videos where I was like, I don't get the Adams family conceptually already, so I don't get. I realized that at a certain point in my life, I was like, I don't think I like the Adams family. So I
I
even more
I
don't
don't
get it when
either.
you put a hat on a hat and you're like, it's the Adams family. Like the Adams family, the whole joke is that they're weird. So if you put them with things that are weird, it defeats the whole purpose of the joke. Plus, it was also like it was Harry Potter. So I'm like, I'm not really interested in the Adams family, but it's Harry Potter. Like
Well,
I'm just
but
not.
so I actually there's still a blog post up on rtmedia.org where I point out how Wednesday is unintentionally like I forget what the blog post actually is. Like Wednesday unintentionally proves what's wrong with itself in its own narrative. Because like Wednesday Adams in the series Wednesday is a horrible person.
Yeah.
Like she is a terrible fucking person.
I saw clips of her being mean to both her parents. I'm like, that's just counterintuitive to the whole idea of the Adams family. Also, I don't like Luis Guzman as Gomez Adams. I just think that's bad casting.
Yeah, and what's funny is when you say that, people were like, "Oh, are you mad that he's a Latino?" And I'm like, "Well,
No,
no,
Gomez
it's
Adams is literally Latino. It's just bad casting.
actually,
Is
fun fact, he's not.
he not? He's
No.
always played by he's typically always played by a Hispanic guy.
He-
Almost always. His name
I
is
think
Gomez.
I think that actually started, well, yeah, but his surname is Adams.
Touche. Touche.
And that's I forget what I wrote in the blog, but that actually started with the movie, I think.
Did
And
it?
so that started kind of a precedent, but it's a newer precedent than you would think.
Oh, well, all right, fair enough. I to be fair, I know like three versions of the Adams Family. That's obviously the movie.
Hold on.
That
I go on a rant about this, so I'll look it up because I actually did research on this because I don't give a shit that Gomez that he's a fictional character with an ambiguous history. So if he's
yeah,
even portrayed as Latino, it doesn't matter. What I get tired of is people making a big deal out of something that's not even accurate, and it's like the end all be all. So let me find it. I can find
now that,
my bit.
now that you said that, because I've seen I grew up watching the new Adams Family, and I don't think he was Hispanic in that. Now that you said that,
Oh, so
I just my brain.
yeah, the blog post is titled "How Wednesday Inadvertently Points Out What's Wrong with Social Media," and I have a quote from the show that says, "I find social media to be a soul sucking void of meaningless affirmation." I'll just read the first part to tell you, and then I'll find my bit about Gomez. Have you ever found a movie, show, or other piece of media that sets out to make a statement, but the creators are so enamored with themselves and their own biases that they end up making the opposite point? Don't Look Up tried so hard to be anti-Trump and pro-science in quotes, but the president in the movie ends up being an elitist Hillary Clinton wannabe. Perhaps the greatest flaw in filmmakers' plan is the plot point of, quote, trust the science. In the movie, the scientists who know the truth are trying to tell the public about it are shunned, censored, and silenced. Like the
I
people,
just did
like
a
the
video about that movie.
yeah, like the way people who were questioning the mainstream quote science were treated during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would like to point out that the vast majority of those information bits are now considered factual. But there was a time where you would literally be you'd be banned. We had a podcast episode banned on YouTube. Oh, and I gotta so oh
Can't even.
point number one. I won't read the section, but I'll just read you the title. Point number one: the Wednesday dance videos aren't even playing the right song. And
I
then
just don't
section
like what's her face, Jenna Ortega. I don't like her. So
See,
that also has something to say.
I don't really know that much about Jenna Ortega, but anyway, so point number two, Wednesday is unlikable. For a character who is incredibly popular with, quote, outsiders, Wednesday would be horrible to be around. In the first episode, Wednesday simultaneously gives support and emotional abuse to her own brother, dismisses her father as an idiot, attempts to murder, and manages to cause permanent disfigurement to a fellow student, berates her own mother to the point of emotional abuse. Her first interaction with her new roommate is to remove her decor and judge her, someone she doesn't even know, simply because she doesn't align with Wednesday's aesthetic. This is hilarious considering Wednesday's whole deal is being her own person, yet she falls into every goth stereotype and judges literally everyone she comes across. It's shocking to me how Wednesday has so many fans considering how awful she is as a person. At her very best, she's unpleasant, and at worst, she's dangerous. When people stay when people stay away from her, it's self-preservation, not bullying.
That's
Uh,
yeah,
And then
yeah.
point three, the Adams family isn't Latino, or at least they aren't exclusively Latino. Before calling before calling for my tarring and feathering, read on. One of the many talking points about Wednesday when it was announced was people being allegedly upset at Gomez Adams being played by Luis Guzman. I really didn't want to I really didn't want to unpack this, but after seeing a TikTok video with some obnoxiously self-righteous and likely college freshman girl said, quote, "Where do you think Gomez came from?" I feel inclined to open the bag. So let's start with old Gomez. First, Gomez is a Spanish name. Spain is in Europe. So based on the name alone, there's nothing concrete. The argument for Gomez being Latino seems to come from his portrayal in the 1991 film by Puerto Rican actor Raul Julia. But
Yeah,
Jake, I
that's
hear
where I
you
know him
s-
from.
but Jake, I hear you say, if he has a Spanish last name, doesn't that make him Latino? There's certainly a debate there, but if we're going with the dictionary definition of Latino, Gomez would have to hail from Latin America, which isn't Spain. Furthermore, Gomez is a surname in Spanish, but Gomez is his given name. His family name is Adams. Funnily enough, there is no controversy over Gomez's name throughout Latin America because his name isn't even Gomez in Hispanic American dubs. His name is Homero. In
Huh.
addition to the problematic name origin, his name wasn't originally supposed to be Gomez. When the first television series was being developed, the characters had no names yet. The decision for Gomez's name was left up to the actor portraying him, and the choices were Gomez or Rapelli. The actor John Aston chose Gomez. It was during the television series that the Gomez character was fleshed out and distinctly identified as Castilian Spanish. But Gomez
Huh.
himself and by his wife Morticia, both by Gomez himself and his wife Morticia. Morticia, incidentally, often refers to Gomez as Bubala, which is either Yiddish or Bavarian German for darling. It's also worth noting that Morticia is known to speak French. All of these
Huh.
linguistic quirks suggest that she is of some sort of European and or Jewish ancestry. And speaking of Morticia, in Wednesday, she is portrayed by Catherine Zeta-Jones. Jones is often mistakenly identified as a Latina actress, but I hate to burst your bubble, she's Welsh, technically Welsh Irish, but is still far away from Latin America.
Oh, interesting. I just learned a shit ton about the Adams family. I did not know that. I know that
I
they
I did an
originally
obscene
are.
amount of research for
I know that they originate from like a series of paintings or comic books that were like one panel didn't have any like dialogue or anything like that.
yeah,
I've
that was the start.
never dug the Adams family. Never been my thing. I don't get them. I don't get the I realized as I got older trying to find the words for it. I don't get the joke. And it's just one
I
of those
don't get
things.
it either. Yeah. I mean, they're literally surrounded by muggles.
Yeah, yeah. Like I get the idea that well, I mean, I do fundamentally get the joke that they're supposed to be the normal ones when everyone. Yeah. Anyway, um,
But yeah,
that's interesting though.
Wednesday was a conundrum for me because again, it's like I think it's no secret that I think a lot of America and well, I think a lot of just people in general have lost their critical eye and the bar for good art has really come down
Oh, I mean,
because
media literacy is dead.
it's
And
not dead, but it's definitely
it's
diminished.
pretty close.
I mean,
I've seen
it's
some. I mean, you're on TikTok. I've seen some bad takes. I've stitched some of those bad takes.
okay, but yeah, that's TikTok. I mean, barring social media because
Fair,
social media incentivizes bad takes. I've actually seen
also
a
true.
lot of I've actually seen a lot of very well thought out um like video essays on film and TV and stuff like that, whether it's pro or critical. Um they don't tend to get views because they're usually longer and they actually require thought. So it's not
Yeah.
dead, it's just not appreciated like it used to be. Like I'm the kind of weird motherfucker that will I literally watch a 3 hour video essay about like what was the last one I did? Shit, I can't remember.
I mean, I watched a 4 hour video about the Star Cruiser. So, like, hey, man, I'm not one to judge.
Oh, I mean I enjoyed both uh Evening with Kevin Smith specials, so
Oh man, those specials are phenomenal. How could you not? The second
they
one
are
has a really great bit. I mean, my favorite. There's so many great bits in those specials. One of my favorites is when he's talking about getting stoned and watching Dora the Explorer with his daughter, and he's like, no, it's great when we're stoned, but that's not how real life works. Or I mean, I think I yeah the the story about Superman Return or Superman Lives.
that was the only part of the Flash I enjoyed.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
was it. And I was literally
it's
and
good.
not the Spurr.
It's a spider. And my favorite bit of that story is that, and then I went to see Wild Wild West, and there was a spider. There was a spider. Um,
You know, Wild Wild West is one of those movies where I've done a full 180 on that one because when I saw it as a kid, I loved it. I watched it again when I was like I was gonna say young adult, but like in my 20s, and I'm like, this is the biggest piece of dog shit. And then
I love that movie
I watched it
because it's
again.
bad.
I watched it again somewhat recently, and I'm like, you know what though? It's kind of like The Mummy insofar as if you're just watching it for the fun of it,
Yeah.
it's a really good movie. Like it's if you're if you're watching it for it to make sense, you're no, it's not gonna happen. But
mean, I watched Crank for the podcast. I watched both of them. Those movies are awful, like in terms of they're just bad movies. But man, those movies they're so awesome.
well, I was gonna say that about, like the Top Gun series, but actually Top Gun Maverick is both awesome and a genuinely good movie. But
See,
the first Top Gun is nothing but just like America, fuck yeah.
my thing with that movie was it was just a lot of like I did this a bit on it, but it was a lot of like jargon and like inside lingo about jets that I just didn't appreciate. And then I didn't think that the jet sequences were like interesting enough for me to like it just didn't engage. I've seen that movie twice, and both times I'm like it just doesn't do it for me.
Is it Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick?
Top Gun, first one. I've
Yeah.
never made it to Maverick because I chose to watch Independence Day 2 instead.
I actually do recommend Top Gun Maverick because I will be honest. I was gonna go to the because I love Top Gun, but it's a popcorn movie, right? I love it because it's like fun to love it. Um, but I was shocked. I'm sitting in the theater in Top Gun Maverick. I'm like,
You're not the only person to say that, and it's like the only reason why I've ever been willing to give it a chance. But I
you
watched
should
the
because
first
it's
one in order to watch the second one. It just did
yeah.
not do anything for me.
Which I will say the only fault Top Gun Maverick may have is that in order for it to really hit you properly, you do have to have seen the first one. But
Yeah,
I'm in shock in theater. I'm like, not only is it like better technically, which makes sense because it was some years later,
yeah.
it's like a legitimately better movie. Like the
I've heard you're
story, yeah,
not the first person to say that. You're really not.
the story is like genuinely good. Like it's just a good movie.
So
I was
okay,
shocked.
um, to tie it back to Harry Potter. Looking forward to the future of Harry Potter. As a person who is I don't think they should make that streaming show. I think that's a
Oh
bad
no no no
idea. I
no
think
no no no
nobody
no.
wins. I think the poor kids who are going to be in that deserve better than the bullying they're going to get for not being the originals. Like, in my opinion, if you're going to do a new anime or a new Harry Potter anything, it should be animated. Do an animated series instead
You,
of a live. That way you can do everything visually you couldn't do in the movies.
so I apologize. I don't know that much about it. So, but they're making a series that's going to follow the same, like it's going to tell the same story, but in a series.
Yeah, so the idea is that it's going to be on HBO Max and it's a long form series and it's supposedly live action and it's going to be a book a season.
You know, I'm actually down for that, and
I
here's why.
look,
But it'll give you, it might. So some people criticize the movies because they don't follow the books like to a T, and this gives them the opportunity to at least try that out. And people are gonna watch it because even begrudgingly, like the
oh,
Potterheads are
for
gonna be
sure.
like. So I mean, it's almost a way to like make a beat for beat remake of the books.
Sure. My argument would be it's the endeavor that I mean, unless they do a really good job, I just don't see it making anybody happy. Like I just think like the poor kids who are going to be in that, it's going to be like a rush to get them to get those things made before they age out of the roles. And like that poor kid who's playing Harry Potter, forever he's going to be the well, he's not Daniel Radcliffe, or is he better than Daniel Radcliffe?
See, but
That's why
that's
I'm
why
like,
you need to have bit parts for as many of the film cast members as you can.
I think so. Well, I mean, but I don't know. A lot of them are like because J.K. Rowling is involved. A lot of the original cast are like, no, we're not interested. So that's where I'm like, that's why WB wants to. Last I heard, rumor has it they're trying really hard to buy it out from under her. Like they want it out from under her, so they want to cut her out so bad. Um,
That's never happening. But
no, she will never.
how hilarious would it be to have Daniel Radcliffe as Filch?
I mean, I think they should get him a beard. He should grow a beard. He should be Dumbledore.
Okay, don't hate it.
or
I
or
think he's a
or
little short for Dumbledore, but
or Sirius Black. I'm either that or Sirius Black.
I
I think
think
it'd be kind of fun
I think he
to have him
could
be
do
Sirius Black.
Sirius, but although I don't know, he might not be quite old enough to play Sirius yet.
I mean, by the time they get
Well,
that, but I mean,
he's certainly not old enough to play Filch.
no. But I mean, we just go. He's a younger Filch. He's just younger in this
Well,
timeline.
you can Filch is the type of character that you can age him up fairly easily.
True. But also, like
But
that's where my argument for like do an animated series, get a voice cast of like a younger voice cast, and like yeah, get it. Do like it. Are you a fan of Scott Pilgrim at all?
I've no, I'm not seen
Uh-uh.
it.
They did a Netflix show for it, and they brought back all of the original cast, and they did all this. So do a similar thing where you bring back the original cast, and they can just do small voice roles. They can show up and film, do like in an afternoon in their closet, and then yeah, then I think like you can get like a lot of the stuff that they were held back that you would be held back by in live action. You're no longer to me, animation always allows you to do the stuff you can't do in live action, especially with
Yeah,
something
but
as whimsical as Harry Potter.
yeah, but unfortunately, see, here's the thing though. It's not like they have a shortage of money. They can make this show good live action, and I think with Harry Potter, you kind of need to just for to give it the star power that it deserves because like a good example would be I was actually kind of excited for well, initially I was excited for Rings of Power, and then before I even watched it, I read what it was, and I was just like, "Oh, so you took Tolkien's work and pissed on it, set it on fire, and then said, 'Fuck it, I can do this better,'"
Sounds about
and
right. It's
failed
Amazon, right?
yeah, and failed miserably. But
Sounds about right.
I mean, it could have been so good, man. It could have been so good. But I don't understand. It's fucking written for you. It's written for you right fucking here. It's right here. He
I mean,
already
yeah.
wrote the script.
I mean, it's yeah, it's a show. That's my thing with these stupid what was it like an 8 episode show? Probably I hate streaming shows. They're never long enough. Like you have, they're never long enough. So
Yeah,
they always cut
yeah.
stuff out, and it just yeah, it's always for the worst.
Well, they used to call those miniseries.
Yeah, that is my other thing with this Harry Potter series. It's like, I mean, on the way, like, are they going to devote, or is it going to be like each season 6 episodes long, and they still cut stuff out and change stuff, and like yeah, and there's certain chapters in those first couple books where I'm like, do we really need Nicholas Flamel's death day? Like, I understand why they cut that out. Do we really need to do that in a series? Like,
No, yeah, so it's one of those things where if it's in the right hands, it'll be very good, but it probably won't be in the right hands, so it'll probably suck. But we can hope. We
well,
can
here's the thing, and this depends on whether you consider it to be the right hands. I don't, but like J.K. Rowling, she's very heavily involved in this. And the last time she was heavily involved in one of these things, we wound up with these where the beast they're in the case movies, and like those are bad. Well, I maintain the only one of them that's truly bad is the second one. Well, okay, maybe the third one where the magic horse decides who's Wizard King is probably also bad.
I haven't even seen the third one because I hated the second one so much.
The second one's genuinely terrible, and
The
that is
first
written. I
one,
think that's written by J.K. Rowling. I'm
yeah.
pretty sure she wrote
See,
that.
the first one had a charm to it, and Eddie Redmayne carries the whole thing, which I mean
Oh,
he's
for sure.
supposed to, but there was a charm to it, and I actually, and speaking of a video essay, I actually saw, and it was very well done, and she made a lot of valid points about how like Newt Scamander's brand of masculinity is so atypical, but it works very, very well, and I'll be honest, I agree with it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I
he's
like
not
News
your,
Commander,
yeah, Newt Scamander is extremely likable.
but he
Um,
stops being necessary. He starts being unnecessary in his own movies by the second movie, where he's like, why is he even in this movie? Like this,
I mean,
like was that
basically, yeah,
does the
yeah.
second one? The second one introduced Dumbledore, right? As what's his
I
face as
believe so.
Dumbledore?
Jude Law, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Jude Law as Dumbledore, and yeah, he becomes like irrelevant in his own movie. I would, yeah. There's two movies in that franchise. Like I said, there's the Dumbledore prequel. He's Jude Law and he's young and sexy and he's having fun. And then there's the Eddie Redmayne and Dan Fogler and they're having fun traveling the world looking for animals. Those both of these movies are interesting, but they conflict with each other. Like, yeah, I would watch a he has to save a magical dragon or whatever from a bad guy. Like, I'd watch that movie. I just wish they'd made that movie.
See, what's funny is I think Fantastic Beasts would have been a much better series. because then you could have stories like that.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
the whole theme of the show could be, he's writing his book and he's got to, learn about these various creatures, and through that he can, and you can even have a thread of the Wizarding War be in the background as the story
yeah.
progresses, because obviously he's in contact with Dumbledore and he has to go rescue a dragon from a black market dealer, right?
Yeah.
And he
Like
he
having
needs,
him.
yeah, he needs the dragon, but then he finds out that's how you can introduce it, is the black market dealer are in fact people working for Grindelwald.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That
Yeah. I mean, so
that could have
I, s-
been really fucking cool.
I saw someone compare him to like Doctor Who, and I'm like, yeah, like kind of a fun, quirky Doctor Who style character where yeah, he's got to rescue. He got, and then yeah, then you could do that. That's the thing that's frustrating about those movies is you make a valid point. She's not a terrible. She's a better world builder than she is like an individual like story or character writer. I would say like her world is more interest is it tends to be more interesting anyway than the individual people in that story. Like you're more interested in being a wizard and Hogwarts and than you
Well,
are
yeah, and
necessarily in Harry Potter as a character.
yeah, although I do like Harry Potter as a character, but he's a character that grows with the reader, so
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense that you would emphasize the world as the attraction. And I mean, it makes sense because it translates into a theme park extremely effectively.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think people who are like, "Oh, she's a that's an idea when it comes to like hardcore Harry Potter people that I'm like I push or hardcore anti-Harry Potter people, I should say. I push back on that she's a bad world builder. Like yeah, she's not there are
They
elements of it that
literally
are
built the
they
world though.
built it. Yeah,
Like
they built it.
they made it real,
They built it. It's hard to dispute that.
which I've never been. And
Um,
I still want to, but I've honestly never been, and I'm kind of mad
it's on my
about that.
bucket list. It's on I mean it and Nintendo Land. They're like I want to go to both.
You know what? When we're all getting fucking rich for this, we should just go to Harry Potter World and just criticize it the whole time.
I kind of want to be like I kind of want to get you know how they have those like secret ceremonies where they like let you choose your own one. I kind of want to do that and be like, wow, the animatronics aren't very believable, are they? Just be a
No,
massive
they're not.
prick.
No, they're not.
They're not
It's
very
like,
believable, are they?
where do I get my dark side wand? Where's Nocturne Alley?
Yeah, I'd like to go to Nocturne Alley,
I want to be a Harry Potter Sith.
right? What is yeah, exactly? I mean, yeah. Are you a Kingdom Hearts fan at all?
I'm not up to date at all, but I love Kingdom Hearts. It's my second
Um,
favorite video game of all time.
have you gotten to the? Well, have you played the
I've
3DS
o-
one?
I've only played the first one. I own
Ah,
I own Kingdom Hearts 2. I haven't played.
okay, because there's a point in that franchise where it literally just becomes Harry Potter. Like I without getting everything giving like there's Horcrux like it's Star Wars and then it's Harry Potter. Like it just devolves to like there's it's Horcruxes. It's
That
very
was
funny.
that was another thing where that game when it first came out had a lot of naysayers, and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is fucking amazing.
I know. I was one of them.
And then you
Like,
played it, right?
and then I played it and it was amazing. I was like, this game, it drives me crazy when people are like that franchise is convoluted. Because I'm like, it's no more convoluted than like like a standard anime.
But it's
Like
also the point.
I mean to a degree, yeah. Like it drove me crazy when if you're familiar with Game Grumps, the Star Bomb, they did the simple plot of Kingdom Hearts. They tried to pretend like the first one was convoluted. It's like, no, the first one's like the least convoluted one. That one makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and
By
I
the
do
third one, I will acknowledge it gets kind of bad.
yeah. I do kind of, to me it does seem like I think the first game might be the gem of all of them based on, because I think you're right. I think it gets rather convoluted, but
Here's what I will say as a lover of that franchise. Objectively, well, in my opinion, objectively, the second one's the best one.
really, okay,
Um,
take your word for it.
it's it's the most balanced. It's the best designed. And it still holds up. Like never been a better time to be a Kingdom Hearts fan. There's all sorts of collections and all
I
sorts of
mean, I've played through the first one a couple of times and it still holds up for me. It's a very fun. You know what I love about it is the fact that it's difficult enough to be challenging and fun, but it's not so difficult that it's frustrating.
yes. It's a fun game because it's a game kind of where if you want it to be stupid easy and you want to bulldoze your way through it, you can do that. If you want it to be hard, you can do that. And it's a nice game in that way where it's like it's very approachable. It's I call it baby's first action RPG. It's not over, especially the newer like collector's editions. They've really made those games approachable.
Yeah. No, I did enjoy it. I kind of feel like I have to gush about my favorite video game though of all time. Uh, and it surprises everyone because it wasn't a big hit here in the States, but it's still an objectively very good game in my opinion for the story. I understand people might dislike, they definitely dislike the graphics and minus the cutscenes because the cutscenes are traditional 2D animation and it's fucking gorgeous. Uh, the gameplay itself, again, it's one of those games that, so caveat, I don't like turn-based battle systems. I like free-form battle systems. That's why I love Kingdom Hearts so much. Um, because to me, turn-based battle systems don't require skill,
Fair.
or they require less skill rather. Because like the thing of it is, like when I was playing Zelda Ocarina of Time, I could fight my way out of levels that I had no business being in. Like it was hard as shit, but it's possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whereas in like the Final Fantasy games, if you're not at the level you need to be at, you're going to be destroyed.
Yeah, that's fair criticism. Yeah, that's what a lot of people. I mean, for as much as I hate the movie Click, that's kind of what that movie was kind of about. Yeah, there's just some games you need to be good at.
Yeah, but my favorite video game of all time is Tales of Symphonia.
It's okay. So you say that nobody that catches people off guard. I love
Dick.
that game.
There we go. My cat
I
fucked
love
with it.
that game.
Yeah.
I am very familiar with that game, and I love that game.
Is it not awesome? Like,
I will say I've never beaten it. I only ever I've tried to play it a few times and I get to like I think the first boss, the first like main dungeon area, and then I forget that it's a classic you have to save like every time you hit a save point kind of RPGs and I went back like multiple hours and I was like I just I can't I've never
yeah,
gone back
yeah.
to it.
Yeah,
But it's
you
when I
gotta
swear
save.
I'm gonna wait, I
So
love that game.
I found out they made a remastered version for the Switch.
Oh, interesting. Is it a remaster of the GameCube version?
Yes.
Because it is. Oh shit. Okay, that's because I have the we have the PS3 version, no PS4 5 version, and it's not the GameCube version. It's not as good.
Well, the PS5 version would be a remaster of the PS2 version, but
Yeah, the PS2 version and the GameCube version are different. From what I'm
yeah.
told anyway. They're
No, no,
different. They're not as
they
good.
are. They are. I love I still have my GameCube and like I wanted to go through and play it again, but now that the remaster version, I'm like I might just have to buy that
Good
because
to know. 'Cause, yeah, that GameCube version's good. It's
I
genuinely good.
see I'm weird, so I'm weird. I love the GameCube as a system. I It's still my favorite Nintendo. It's my favorite system Nintendo ever made.
It's my the first. I look. It has a special place in my heart. It's the very first video game system I ever bought with my own money. And Luigi's Mansion. I love Luigi's Mansion.
But
I
I think it
only
was
good Luigi's
perfect.
Mansion is the first one.
No, but think about this, and this I always I argue for the GameCube. It was the perfect system, especially at the time. But think about it. Like it was portable. It had a lot of party games that were super fun.
Hmm.
It perfected Super Smash Brothers with Super Smash Brothers Melee, which is still
Yep.
my favorite one of the series. It even had a fucking handle. Like this thing was designed to take to your friends' houses
Oh,
and,
I
have a
love Melee.
blast
Don't
with.
get me wrong, but in my opinion, the best Smash Brothers game is Ultimate. But that's only because like it's crushing it with guest characters. I mean, like getting to be Sora and fight Mario is like the greatest thing ever.
Okay, to be fair, I've only played Ultimate one time, so you're probably right. But
Like just the fact that like you're like holy shit there's Sora like this Sora you have Sora, Sonic the Hedgehog, Link, and Mario all fight each other. It's like the wildest thing I've ever played. And
that's
he's a legitimately fun character to play.
that sounds super fun. But yeah, man, the GameCube I think was just it was such a good system. And what's funny is people criticize the discs. That was only criticized in the US. That was quasi normal at the time in Japan. It was not a weird thing.
No, and yeah,
It
they
really wasn't.
never those discs they were super popular in Japan. They just never. But it's the similar experience with the Dreamcast where their technology it caught on in Japan and just didn't catch on here, which is
I
yeah, it's
think
a shame.
I
I
think
think that
I think it was
I
a
was gonna
cost
say,
thing.
yeah, I think so. Well, the big thing with the GameCube in the States was it didn't have a DVD player. That's why the
Well, it
PS2
couldn't.
outsold. Was kind of,
Like
yeah, I know it couldn't, but that's why the PS2 outsold it and the Xbox was because it had that DVD player in it. That multimedia, and that's why ultimately PlayStation moved in the multimedia direction was because yeah, that's what people wanted.
yeah. But yeah, Tales of Symphonia, such
I
a
mean, it's
great game.
gorgeous. The end. I mean, I used to watch that opening cutscene just over and over because I was like, why isn't this an anime? I would watch
It
the shit
is.
out of this. Is it now an anime? No, at the time I don't think it was.
It's been, but it's not long enough. I think
No, I imagine not.
they should seriously redo it. Because I think it's only like I think it's only 6 episodes.
Is it interesting?
And that could
I'm gonna have to check that out.
that series could it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, but there's like every episode is a massive time skip. And
Oh, yeah, that would frustrate me.
that is a game that could be turned into a multi-season anime series and be one of the best ever.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, it has the story that suits it. Like all those Tales games are like that. They're all really. But I
And
said the same thing
most of
about
them.
Final Fantasy VII. I'm like, why isn't this an anime? I'd watch this as an anime.
See that should be an anime. That definitely should be.
There's a
Um,
really there is one. It's very short. It's called Lost Order. It's really good.
oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then
Yeah, it's really good.
I guess there's technically Advent Children too, but that's a
Uh,
sequel.
yeah, I don't necessarily. Yeah, I mean, I could see the me and Jordan had this discussion. Is it anime? It's like I don't know. I guess it's technically made in Japan. It's animation. It's not 2D though.
Eh, yeah,
Also,
that depends on your definition, but much like it depends on your definition as to whether or not Harry Potter is I see that here's the thing though, I would not consider Harry Potter a literary classic.
I I don't know. It's so hard because it's too. Yeah, what our definition of of a literary classic has changed so drastically. Like, is it up there with like say a Frankenstein? Like, will it stand the test of time of like a Frankenstein or like a Dracula or like
Well, that's kind of an unfair comparison though, because those
it
books
was just
stood
the
the
first one
test.
that popped into my head.
Well, no, you're right. Those are definitely classics. But what I mean by that is because of the nature of media nowadays, Harry
Yeah,
Potter will never. Harry Potter would have to have sucked to leave the public consciousness. But like to this day, Harry Potter movies, they still have Harry Potter movie marathons on cable television, which is
true,
dying,
true. I
and
would
they will.
on the other hand, I would say that like maybe a more like closer peer to the Harry would be the Narnia books. Um, and
Okay.
those have what's his face is C.S. Lewis is I mean Jordan just he the reason why it popped in my head because he was listening to the audiobooks. He was telling me how those are all more overtly have his religious beliefs all over them, and those have stood the test of time. And
Yeah, but
they're very much steeped in his beliefs.
but they again those have been around for quite a bit longer because the first 1950 through 1956.
True, but so
So
like
maybe it's just a matter of time because I'll be honest, I would consider the Narnia series a classic series.
yeah
Um,
yeah
because yeah,
will
they
it be up
stood the
there
test
with
of.
the
I
I
think
was gonna
you
say
know
you
what? I changed my mind. I think they will. I think in 50 some odd years time, I think Harry Potter will be considered in the same sort of reverence as like the Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of
I think
Narnia.
so. I
Yeah.
think I've seen a lot of people say this that once she dies,
And that's probably
you will
yeah.
be able to have that art separate from artist conversation because I think once that happens, like yeah, 50 years from now, people will be able to, in a similar vein that they do with the Narnia books, be like, yeah, man, she had some unsightly opinions about a certain group of people, maybe, but like, but like,
Well,
but like we appreciate her work. Well, you know,
yeah.
if that is the opinion you subscribe to, I should say.
Well, I was gonna
Um,
say I'm not trying to kick the hornet's nest here, but I think in terms of problematic opinions, that's not a particularly bad one. Um,
I mean, the question is not is it a bad one now? I guess my point would be will it be a bad one in the future that people will be able to separate from?
the jury is honestly still out on that one because this is
Yeah,
and this is the kind of I don't even, nah, we're not even gonna get it. Fuck it, it's the Average Intelligence podcast. I'll say it. The thing that's the thing that makes the transgender debate different from all the others is the fact that this is the first one where one side is calling into question established, like generally accepted reality.
Fair,
Whereas
fair.
before it was largely a matter of opinion or perception of a reality. Like for example, with civil rights, right? Nobody questioned the fact that people were different skin tone and races. Like
True.
that was something that wasn't argued. The debate was how whether or not these people should be treated equally. And in hindsight, obviously, we know the answer is yes. But at the time, the only debate was whether or not these two groups were necessarily on the same level. But now you've got one side, and I'm not, well, I- I'm not trying to sound like a dick, but it's going to sound that way. So I'm just going to say you have one group that is questioning what has been considered for the entirety of human history to be objective reality. And it also flies in the face of other, how should we say this? I don't want to say civil rights because so it flies in the face of the gay rights movement and its logic. And I think that is the reason why you could make the case that this isn't simple progressivism. It time will tell because perceptions change, right? But I don't think this one's going to stick around because this could be, I think this one will go the same direction as eugenics, where at the time there were a lot of people making a lot of like scientific arguments, but then as time went by, people were like, nah, this is bullshit.
Here's what I will say to counter that. Certain social ideas anyway. Like I mean, there was a point where people thought that like people of color weren't human, weren't you know what I mean? So like
Right,
I don't know the
right,
general perception that like
but nobody questioned that they were black or brown.
true. I guess the general my thing when it comes to any issue is the louder people are about it, the more people will. So like that when people stop being loud about this and the dust settles and we're all just like, look, man, do what I subscribe to a live and let live idea where it's like, hey man, do what you're gonna do so long as what you do doesn't hurt people. Cool
So
by
that's
me.
what I'm saying, and
Um,
I don't want to get it twisted. It's not, and I get ascribed a certain political affiliation and belief. I get lumped in with, you know, people that don't have a live and let live. My whole thing is though, the only reason I bring it up most of the time is because it's a bad argument. Because the argument for trans people existing should just be this is who I want to present myself as. Cool.
yeah.
But you don't have to justify it by arguing with, you know, biological reality. That's the only thing I'm saying is I'm not saying don't exist. Absolutely, do whatever I just truly don't give a shit. It doesn't bother me because you're it doesn't bother me until it's shoved down my throat and I'm being told that no, you must ignore objective biological fact and cater to my desires. And this is a minority of the transgender community anyway. It's just the loudest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Most of them tend to subscribe to the similar idea of just live and let live, man. You leave
yeah.
us alone, we'll leave you alone.
And
It's all cool.
that's all I'm saying. And that's what I to tie it back to J.K. Rowling. And again, I'm not transgender, so it was by no means offensive to me, but I don't see how stating a fact made so many people mad. Like
My thing.
he
Sorry.
didn't say die transgenders die. She said what was it she said? She said men can't be women and women can't be men or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But I
N-
tend to not. I don't engage with something that I'm not in that
Yeah.
regard. So I don't pay attention 100% to what she says. And in regards to like tying it to her work, her work is, I don't think her work is transphobic. Of the
No.
phobics that her work is. I made the case that it is. I mean, we joked about it earlier, but I do think there is a level of fat phobia in there, and I unquestionably there is maybe some anti-Semitism in there.
I think that's more
Whether
the
by
movies. Honestly, I think
maybe
that's more the
maybe
movies.
maybe it's, I mean, there's a lot of like, I mean, there is a great deal of like the goblins control the money of the world
It's way more over in the
but like
movies.
the
But yeah,
hook
I
noses and the ears, it's way more over. You're absolutely right. I so when if the question of like, if in 50 years, what prejudice is going to be tied to her work or not, like when she's no longer on, I don't think transphobia is going to
no.
be that.
Now
Not in the
to
way that
be
Christianity is tied to those Narnia books anymore.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I think the tweet was if I was like her publicist, I would have been like, why?
For me with J.K. Rowling, it's not so much the like saying the, when it comes to anyone who has a unpalatable opinion to society, it's not so much the saying of the bad opinion as like the doubling, or what is perceived as a bad opinion, as it is the doubling down on the opinion.
So
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
is the opinion that you have worth being considered the worst person on the planet? Like, is it worth that?
Well,
And in this case, or is
all
it worth
I
losing your $1 million franchise potentially? Like, is it
well,
worth that?
she's not going to because she still owns it. But I would say if J.K. Rowling is the worst person on the planet, then boy, it's fucking great out there.
I mean, true, but I'm just saying, like, there's a great many people who like hate her, and like, I don't know, I don't know, it just there's a point where I'm like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem worth it. I much rather have people love me for my gay wizard, and my like that's the thing that's crazy to me, is she out of nowhere was like, my wizard is gay. And so it's just like for everyone to be like, yeah, she's the one who's a bigot. Like, that was the weird one for me.
That's just it.
Like,
I don't think she's
be happy you made your Hermione black, and you're like, and your Dumbledore gay. Like, just be happy with that, and maybe don't quadruple down on the I don't know.
well,
That's,
but like I
I'm
was
an
saying,
optics person
yeah,
at the end of the day.
but
So
like I was
like,
saying, like those are objectively two different things, though, and that's kind of what
true.
nobody. That's the dirty part that nobody really talks about is these are not the same things. And I saw a meme the other day that was fucking hilarious, talking about Kamala Harris being the presumptive presidential nominee, and it was Forrest Gump sitting on the bench and said, "And just like that, women will women again."
That is, I will say when it comes to Kamala Harris, I found it funny that the last time I did this, I said all that stuff about how they need to pander to Gen Z, um, how they need to go after Trump for saying the weird things, and for being old. And like, they immediately, as soon as it was pretty much like guaranteed she was the nominee, did two of the three things I said she should. She immediately started pandering to Gen Z, and like, I saw a clip of, I have it saved in my draft, but I saw a clip of one of her presumptive VP not picks, basically being like, "Yeah, man, the people on the people on the other side, they're saying weird stuff. They want to be involved in this," and I'm like, "Wow, they're doing literally the exact thing I said they should." I made a video where I was like, it's. The person responded, I said, "Oh, they need to go for Joe Biden's age. That's how they win." The person's like, "Oh, it wasn't about his age. It was about his cognitive decline." I'm like, "Yeah, no, that doesn't matter. This isn't about what's true. It's about winning."
Yeah, I saw that actually. But yeah, and I kind of make the case too. It's like you said though. At the end of the day, it's like, should a tweet really define an author's legacy? Well, I guess it depends on the tweet, right? But
Yeah, or
this,
should she let it define her legacy?
well,
Is
I
what I
see.
would
That's
say.
the thing. I don't think she's trying to. She's not the one that keeps bringing it up. Like other people, like the tweet is literally years old.
True, but she does. Well, I mean, she has her. She's one of those. She's kind of like, okay. Best comparison I can make is Elon Musk, but she's one of those people who says dumb things on Twitter all the time. Like, she has a tendency to say dumb things on Twitter all the time. Um,
Maybe she's but I did say, what Donald Trump should have done to win in 2020 is he should have just come out as a trans woman. Choke the left with their own rope. Like,
I don't know if he should have come, but I mean, certainly he should have
oh,
maybe
she should have.
considered.
She should
Oh,
have come
she
out.
should have. Oh, she should have. I was gonna say one of them should have gotten a transgender running. Oh, yeah, run with Trump should have run with shit. What's her name? Their name. A really famous Republican one. Oh my God. Caitlyn Jenner. He should have ran with Caitlyn Jenner. Being like, we'll run over people with our car
Well,
2024.
but see, here's the thing though: the left hates Caitlyn Jenner.
No, that's what I'm saying. Trump should have run with him, and then Trump could be like, I'm friends with a chick. It could be like the when you're like I have black friends, but I have transgendered friends. You should vote for me. Again,
What
we're not talking about what people will like. We're talking about winning and pandering to win. I'm just
but
saying, if he
what
wants
but
to get those Gen Zs,
what's great though is the fact that it won't work because the left loves you if you're a minority until you're a Republican.
that is also true. That I can't disagree with.
And then you're a piece of shit, despite your minority status, because you may as well. I think they actually call them white adjacent.
I mean, yeah, just the black conservative, the term black conservative, that's a dirty word amongst liberals.
Well, yeah, because it flies in the face of their narrative.
Yeah, it does. It does. I
But
can't
anyway,
disagree with that.
we've been going at this for a while. So any final thoughts on Harry Potter? Because we do this every time we talk, we deviate, and
We do.
it's funny
We
because
do.
it's always such a fun conversation, but we do get so off topic.
I do the same thing with Jordan where I'm like, oh man, I don't want to disrupt content. It's good content. Yeah, my final thoughts on Harry.
To be fair, people expect that on the Average Intelligence podcast, but
You want good content. My final thoughts. Yeah, my final thoughts on Harry Potter are okay. The thing that ultimately drives me crazy about this franchise is people are so protective of it, and it doesn't need it.
yeah,
And that
exactly.
would be my ultimate point. Like my
It's like
point. My
defending,
point.
yeah, it's like defending Michael Jordan. It's like he really
I
doesn't
mean,
need you.
call me when LeBron has 5 championships. That's my favorite quote. All the evidence I need, Sean. Sorry. No, my point is like you could be critical of a thing, and like just because you're critical of a thing doesn't. It's funny how you're like you're automatically went to you don't like Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter, but I'm critical of shit I love all the time. That's part of the fun of loving a thing is being able to be like, yeah, it's flawed, and that's how you make flawed things better is by being critical of.
It's worth noting, I was just flipping through and saw this chapter 8 of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is titled Flight of the Fat Lady.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think we have discovered that J.K. Rowling is in fact a bigot, but not in the way you think.
No, it's funny because I did real quick. Like, yeah, I did a whole thing. I went back and forth with this guy for like a couple days where I kept saying, yeah, she's fat phobic, like demonstrably fat phobic. Like and I don't even think necessarily it's intentional. Like
Like
I
she
think
didn't, yeah,
legitimately,
yeah, she
I
didn't
think
like
leg-
she didn't set out to like I'm gonna show the fatties that
No,
they're
I think
wrong.
legitimately, like as a joke, Jordan says it's because she got rejected by like every publisher. He says that it's a publisher that rejected her was fat, and that's why. But I maintain like she was victimized by a heavyset person, and she's just held on to it subconsciously for like ever.
Either that or was she fat as a child?
Maybe, and maybe she
Oh,
got a lot of shit for
oh
being
God,
fat.
oh God. There's a Reddit post. Does anyone else get the feeling that J.K. Rowling really hates fat people?
So sorry. Have you never heard the criticism that these books are fat phobic until today?
Apparently not. She describes all the
That's
fat people
so
in the book.
funny.
Oh my God, and she has Hagrid give Dudley a pig snout and tail. Like
Yep. Yeah, legit. It's I'm fair-minded to that poor woman, but it is hard to once you notice it, you will like go back and read those books, you will never unnotice it. Like she spends a great deal of time describing how fat Dudley is. It is remarkable. It truly is.
you know what? Some people are making good points though, because the original post says the good guys are often described as thin like Harry and Dumbledore. However, people are like, what about Neville and Hagrid? They're not thin. I think
Well,
more, I think it pales in comparisons to how much she hates snakes.
true.
And then
Neville gets thin as those books go on.
right, because
That's kind of the whole thing.
he
Yeah.
progressively becomes more good and heroic. But like, what about Mrs.
Yeah.
Weasley? The Fat Friar is portrayed in a good light too.
They're not described as being when they're described that the thing about fat characters in those books is the fact that they're fat is often the first thing that's mentioned. That's kind of the thing. So
Oh,
it's
and
like it's
then
the
yeah,
defining, it's their defining
yeah.
characteristic is
That makes
like
that makes me agree with you in the fact that I don't think it's so much intentional as it is subconscious, but like they do point out Petunia's thin, Voldemort is thin, the Malfoys are thin.
yeah. But
Um,
like it's the way she go like with Dudley in particular, she goes out of her way to describe him as being fat. It's like by the fifth book, you get it. He's fat. It's just
See,
one of those things.
if Dudley were the only fat character, I would say that it's to draw to be a foil for Harry. But yeah,
It's
I
not even
think
just Dudley, it's Dudley, it's the Dursleys, Umbridge. Umbridge, the first thing he mentions, if she mentions every time she describes her as how she's fat. She's toad like and she's fat. Like it's yeah, she's
wow,
got a beef against fat people. Yeah.
yeah, agreed. I will confess that I do think J.K. Rowling is like subconsciously very fat phobic.
I mean, look again. I guess that's the note we can end this on. Not she's not perfect. I think we mission accomplished on my end. Um,
So if you're a
I'm a
fat
little
if
I'm a little bit a little bit more of a lover of those books. And hey, you've now picked up something that's not so great about them.
we have literally found a middle ground in a
We have
debate
found common ground. It's how
because
it's
now I'm
like
like,
this is how I know we're friends is because like you're like truly like one of the few people like we don't agree on everything, but we can sit here and we can come to a common ground that J.K. Rowling hates fat people. Like I think that is what's going to unite the world at the end
that's
of the day. Right and left, we will all agree.
that's that's the moral of this story.
Yeah, the moral of the story. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
at the end of this very long and heated debate, well, we can agree that J.K. Rowling hates the
Rowling hates
fatties.
fat people. She hates the fat.
That
Oh
is the
man.
perfect stopping point. That is
Yeah.
fucking fantastic. So basically, if you're a fat trans person, J.K. Rowling fucking hates your guts.
She hates you. Yeah, she hates your guts. But thanks for participating and with me. Thanks for accepting my challenge. That
Hey,
was pretty sweet.
anytime. The debates and discussions with you were always a good time. And hey, for those of you who don't know, Justin and I are going to be launching a Star Trek watch along podcast in September. So look out for that. So if you enjoyed this conversation, there's going to be a lot more like it. I don't think we'll have too many debates on Star Trek, but I think there will be a
Yeah.
lot of moments because you're going to be watching it with fresh eyes. So
Yes.
I have nostalgia goggles for the series, and in fact, I know in the first episode you're gonna have something to say about the first pilot, and I already know
I'm as much
it's
as I'm
kind of
excited
how
for the original
selfish.
series. For me, it's plowing through the original series to get to the next generation because that's the show. That's my childhood. Like that's my dad watched that grow like when I was a kid growing up. So that's where my like that's where my desire to watch as much as I'm interested in the original series. Like
Yeah.
I'm really stoked for the next generation.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're gonna have to stick it out though, because unfortunately, before we get to next generation, there's a couple of seasons of the podcast we got to get through. Um,
Totally fair.
we've
But
got
also in terms of promotion, check out last episode of Toon Talk 2.0 because you get to hear the theme song for the podcast and it like seriously, Virus knocked it out of the park. I know I keep saying that, but like the instrumental on like it the instrumental on it kicks fucking ass. Like I
actually,
cannot understate that.
I'll just play it for them here.
It's pretty sweet.
It's still loaded, so yeah, here it is. This is the theme song for the Final Frontier podcast. The Final Frontier podcast. These are the voyages of Jake Boger and Justin Spurr. Our weekly mission to explore memories of Star Trek's strange new worlds, to recall the search for new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has had the spare time to go before.
and he hasn't quite figured it out yet. So like, yeah, good on him if he did.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he knows how to make music, so he can use a program like because you have virtual instruments, so
Yeah,
he can
true.
very
Yeah, yeah.
easily do that. But I'm pretty sure, not sure. So that was the theme song for the Final Frontier podcast. We're super excited, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, I have had the thought. I was like, this is gonna be a much bigger undertaking than I thought it was gonna be, and now I kind of feel like we have to finish it. And I mean, this will be literal years of content.
I mean that's why that's the great thing with a real good watch along podcast like this. It's like, yeah. And again, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited because I of my history with Star Trek, and like, yeah, I'm it's a franchise I want to know more. Like, honestly, I mean, I know it's ways in the future, but like Brave New Worlds, like that's the
Yeah.
series. I saw a clip of the musical episode, and I was like, I need to understand this franchise. This feels weird and foreign, and I need to.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't really appreciated any of the Star Trek's past Enterprise. I have not seen. Um, so I've heard bad things,
I've
but I
heard
heard
bad
bad
things about
things.
Discovery.
Yeah,
Heard
I've
bad
heard
things
bad,
about Discovery.
but I've heard bad things about Enterprise, and I loved it.
My thing is like
So
lower decks. I keep getting tempted in by lower decks, and I'm like,
see,
I just
I found Lower Decks surprisingly charming, and just to let people know, so the plan is every season of the podcast is going to be. Well, I haven't decided. I thought maybe like the first season of the podcast would be season one of the original series, or maybe we just want to plow through the original series.
yeah. I mean, what we can do, I mean, we could feel it out. And I know you're like an episode a week, but if it hits a point where it's like we can maybe like do two, like like one of the episodes not super dense, we can maybe smash a couple of them together, like maybe
Yeah.
like multi-parters, for example. I know that there's at least one, like the
Oh
Evil
yeah,
Universe
so
one. That's a
yeah,
multi-parter.
that's a
Yeah,
good point. So two-parters, yeah, we're gonna do two-parters in the same episode because I'm not
yeah, I
about.
figured. Yeah.
But then obviously, so you get through the original series, then technically you have the animated series because if we're gonna do this properly. We're not gonna half-ass.
Are we? Here's
So
the question though: are we gonna do movies,
yes.
or here's a follow up point? Did you want to come over to my show and do the movies there?
Oh no, we're gonna do the whole bit. So we'll get through the original series and then we go through
I'm cool with whatever, man.
those first series of movies and then we'll hit Next Generation. But as we get further down the rabbit hole, we're also gonna do like we'll do a special like Galaxy Quest episode because it's not a Star Trek movie, but it is a Star Trek movie.
It's a Star Trek. There's,
Yeah.
this is already run long, but um, fun thing about Galaxy Quest real quick. Have you heard the Star Wars movie? I don't remember what it's called. Star Wars Star Trek movie. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the idea that like every odd movie is a bad one.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you include it's completely thrown off. But if you include Galaxy Quest, it matches up again.
it matches up. Yeah. Yeah, that and I think the timeline is actually spot on for that. But and then obviously we can do like the Orville. Well, we're going to do the Orville because while
I love the overall.
The Orville is not Star Trek, but it is Star Trek. But then one really fun quick season, which we can actually put this in wherever, is we're gonna cover like Star Trek parodies because there's three that I know of. And I don't know if Lower Decks should be. I feel like Lower Decks should be part of that because while it's official Star Trek, it's also kind of a parody.
I always thought that was like Star Trek by way of Rick and Morty. That's how I saw that.
I mean, basically, yeah. But there's an unofficial parody called the Star Reg Zone, which is way funnier than it should be. And are you familiar with Stone Trek?
Oh,
Oh my God. It's a series of it's a Flash series that I found by complete accident years ago. And what they did was they made Star Trek in the aesthetic of the Flintstones.
interesting.
It is again way funnier than it should be. But
That's funny.
we've kept you here long enough. And granted, this episode will have been edited down somewhat because as you're watching this, I am actually on a cruise ship. So,
I'm probably camping in the middle of the woods.
oh,
So
that's right, you are going camping. So yeah,
going
use your
camping, yeah.
time turner to figure that one out, folks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, love Harry Potter, hate Harry Potter, do what you want to do. But what you need to do, get your copy of Revival, book one of the Unveiled book series. And be sure to pledge your money
Also,
and get your tickets for One Weekend at Horrorland, and check out the
because I
Spur
was
of the
gonna
Moment
say,
podcast.
you gotta support Horrorland because not only do I want to pick up a copy of that book in person, but I mean I'd like to meet all these guys in person one day, and that's kind of the most ideal place to do so. So if nothing else, help me and Jake get together in person. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, that's
Come.
gonna eventually happen anyhow. But yes, absolutely. Help bring us together. Because hey, if the Spur of the Moment guys are there, they'll just do a live podcast of Spur of the Moment with,
True.
I'm
Jordan
sure.
says he's never signed an autograph before, but he'll do it. He'll do it.
Yeah, if anyone wants my autograph, I won't charge. I'll also look at you and be like, why? But I'll
Yeah,
do it.
I'll do it. I'll put my name on a piece of paper.
I'll sign your baby. I don't care.
Yeah, I'll sign whatever. But
Again, I
all
don't
that
know
only
why.
happens if you support One Weekend at Horrorland.
So do it.
You do it.
Alrighty, we will
Do
see
it.
you guys next week here on the AIP. Until then,